Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. We are back with another. Oh my God, that's such a cliche YouTube intro. We're back with another debate review, but we are.
We are. That is true. That is empirically, objectively true. That is true.
Absolutely. I am once again joined by my bosom companion, the my brain
Ooh.
is fuzzy. I was trying to come up with something
I,
clever
I,
on From Down
I
Under.
don't think my moves are quite there yet, but
You
I
know,
wouldn't call myself busty, but
I can help you out with that, my friend.
okay. Well, I mean, it's not something I really want to do. You know what? It's quite strange too. Some guy in my state got as a dare, or he lost a bet or something, and he got implants. Australians, as part of this bet, apparently women loved them. They thought they were awesome. Like, so maybe he was onto something. Maybe
It's
wild.
possible. I mean, as our friend Chris Mallard at the Daily Atheist Morning Show often says, who
Yeah,
doesn't love boobies?
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Oh, also Nitty, known to be a fan of the Nitties. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've been having a busy week. You did battle with the notorious Psi 10
Yes,
Rugenkate.
the infamous, yes, who does not, in fact, have circular arguments. His arguments are spirals, not circles,
Oh,
which
good.
is hilarious. So if you don't know, he once did a really famous debate with Matt Dillahunty, and he has this thing of saying, well, if you don't have a absolute knowledge giver, you can't know anything, and there's nothing to back this up besides his say so. And this whole idea, he used to call them like, oh yes, I do circular arguments, but they're virtuously circular as
Mhm.
opposed to viciously. And it's sort of just like he's just renaming it to a spiral, as far as I can tell. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and I. It's not like I'm sick of precept, but I do need a break because it is the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. Like I don't know why people do this. I don't know why they think they can just say, "Hey, God does everything, and I'm not going to consider anything different." It's wild. It is wild.
Sometimes I wonder if it's just trolling. Like they're saying the most absurd things they can think of just to see how you'll respond. But
Maybe.
who knows? It's pretty wild. But as I
Yeah.
understand it, today's review. I can speak English. I just did another show, folks, and it was yeah. It's a thing.
Oh,
But
yeah, yeah.
this is Dan Barker versus what the hell is his name? Pastor
He's
Adam
Pastor.
Lloyd Johnson.
Yeah, yeah. He
So
has too many names to remember. That's
I
too many.
know,
Just give me a first and a last.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, middle names can be fun, but I just whatever.
Yeah.
But he is he's an evangelical of some sort, so the odds of him being a priest are fairly low. This is from a few years ago, as you can see, at a free flow convention. But yeah, Dan's debates are usually pretty entertaining, so I thought we would take a look at this one, and we're going to try our best to get this once the video done in a single shot.
Okay. Well, we'll give it a go. But yeah, I think I'm just going to refer to him as Andrew Lloyd Webber, quite frankly, because I
Fair?
don't think I remember that. Yeah.
Well, not fair to Andrew Lloyd Webber, but you know.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. Maybe it is disrespecting a very amazing composer and musical genius there.
Yeah. I'm speaking in tongues today. I am like completely overwhelmed with everything because life is terror.
Okay.
But we're going to have some
Yeah.
fun tonight. So hello,
Yes.
everyone in the live chat. Thank you for joining us. Before I forget, this is the second live show of this month. Some months I manage to do more, but every month I definitely do
Yeah.
At least the two, because Mark and I alternate with these debate reviews. But I want to make sure to get out those gift memberships that YouTube gives me. And this
You haven't
so
given
that
out.
I'm
Yeah, okay.
sure we're doing. So I'm just doing all of them right up front. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Those went to the Mighty Filbert, Weston Campbell, Mr. Peabody, Cake Marquez, Yahooligan, Billy
Everyone
Begs
likes
a
cake.
Lot, Millie Lancaster, Callie A, VC Wants a Pony, Don't We All VC, and
Yeah.
Tilting Windmill. So congratulations, everyone. Enjoy your assorted random emojis. There's so many, and the community gets to vote on emojis. It's a great time, and there's more exclusive content than ever. There's the whole backlog of extra stuff. There's 2 regular videos in the pipeline and a brand new short that I just put up today. All of that is members first. I always release stuff members first, so you get to see it before it goes public. So that's just one more perk of joining membership. I hope you enjoy, and if you like it, I hope you renew later, because holy shit, I could use all the help I can get. Alrighty, enough sales
Don't
pitch for
forget
me.
to like and subscribe as well, because that really, really does help. It absolutely does, and that is free. That is absolutely free. Just like these memberships that these Emberships that Ember has given out.
Yeah. Mark Right-Handed Sith Smith says, I think your chances of getting through this one in one shot are slim and none, and Slim left town. Slim is on a different channel. He does an amusing show. He's not a bad guy. I just don't care for some of the company he keeps, so I don't go around there as much anymore, but you know, he's pretty cool. It's not every day you meet a living cyborg. That's a whole aside. Whatever. Shall we begin the dissection?
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Recognize me without my Freddy.
That's not. Is that the beginning?
Now, you might not recognize me without my Freddy Krueger costume that I had on last night. I wore that because I understand there's a sense in which I'm the enemy here. But I tell you, nobody has treated me.
Right?
Was it Halloween last night? The only way I would see that as appropriate if it was Halloween, or you were doing a talk on role play in the bedroom. And even that is kind of disturbing. You know, like I don't know, like Freddy Krueger costume. Is this an inside joke? Was he wearing maybe a striped sweater? I don't know. This is wild. What the hell?
I don't know either. I mean, I don't get to, between work and being very poor, I don't get to any of the major atheist events, or at least I haven't so far. So I'm not sure. It could be Free Flow convention is usually around Halloween, but I don't know.
At least you're on the same continent as the major atheist events. That's definitely one advantage you have over me.
That's true. The one in 2023 was in March, so I don't know why he was Freddy Krueger.
Okay.
C'est la vie. But it's weird that you mentioned that, because it came up earlier today. Some people organizing a convention were trying to figure out how they could invite you, possibly a tunnel directly through the earth.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a fun time. Robin Webster. Hello, Robin. Thank you so much. We appreciate the hell out of you. Sends $2. Thank you much. And says, love that hat, Ember. Good choice on a debate. Dan Barker is always a good choice. And thank you. I don't get to use this hat as often. It seems to go with the ensemble a little better. And I'm like, yeah, let's use this hat. Good stuff.
Like an enemy. So thank you for that. I'm inspired by David and Andy's friendship as I've heard about it over the last few months, and their vision to have this debate where we can provide an example of how to disagree on something very serious, but in a respectful way. Seems like something our culture has forgotten how to do. One of the reasons that they chose me for this debate is I, like them, want to engage with people that I disagree with in a friendly way. not to combat with them as with an enemy, but more to appeal to them as a friend, to truly listen.
I'm not sure what the hell the cameraman's doing, but
I think he wants to show the slides and him at the same time, but he can't zoom out far enough, is what I would guess. That's what I would guess. So he can't make his mind up between the speaker and the presentation. I'm not sure if that is a presentation. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't see any atheists really treating people that are religious like the enemy. I think that's a very, very strange thing to say. And I do agree with him. Excuse me. I do agree with him that people have gotten to, well, this person disagrees with me, they're the enemy kind of thing. And I think we see that a lot, not, hey, they're wrong, but we have to do this shared thing together. There's definitely some people that are, and need to be called out and absolutely need to be shown how dangerous their ideologies are. You have extreme right-wing people, but I don't think of them as an enemy, only metaphorically. It's very strange, but it's like, do you ever get weirded out when they say, oh, religious people say, hey, there's a war on, and you're like, what? Wait, no, there isn't. What war? And they're not speaking metaphorically. They're talking literally. There's a war on between, the righteous and the unbelievers, and it's a weird thing. It's weird.
Yeah, we've been getting that. That's part of the whole religious right thing, the fusion of the two, the evangelicals with the Republicans, because everything is a fucking war to these people. I get that there's
right.
Conflict is part of Western culture, but it seems a little excessive. There's a war on Christmas, there's a war on Easter, there's a war on homelessness, which seems to be like, we're not having a war on homelessness, we're having a war on the actual homeless people. But
yes,
pop off about how Christians are persecuted, whatever. It's fucking wild. But yeah, there is a huge perception within Protestant circles, especially, that I think of these people as my mortal fucking enemy, therefore they must think of me the same way.
And that's not the case.
Yeah, we're like, dude, we're doing what you say you're trying to do, which is save you from nonsense that's going to destroy you.
Yeah. And even if they think they're saving me, from some, eternal hellfire that they can't show me actually exists, I don't think of them as being at war. I don't think of them as an enemy that I have to destroy in any way. It's just, you can believe whatever you want. You just can't tell others how to live based upon that belief. That's all. But we're not telling them how to live based on that belief. We're telling them they can't do things that are harmful for others. It's got nothing to do with the God. Oh dear.
Yeah. Now, if we could do battle with the God, that might be, but it's like, it's almost like a high school debate, right? You've got one person on one side who's saying, in this debate, my opponent will probably tell you thus and such and yada yada, but he's in error. And then the other person is like, did you hear what that guy said? He hates me. He thinks I should be murdered. What are you talking about? It's an intellectual discussion. Come on. Left-handed Jedi, control S. Now you're saved.
Nice.
Yeah. Well done.
And you can be pasted as well, which is unlike Christianity. Yeah.
Ooh, duplicates.
Atheist that I interact with the most is an atheist philosopher by the name of Eric Wielenberg. Though we disagree, we write against each other, our positions, we respect each other, and I would say have become friends over the years. We go out to eat, we speak at conferences together, we wrote a book together. I brought him to the University of Nebraska where we had a debate there. He even wrote, this blows my mind, he even wrote an endorsement for my next book, like what will go on the back cover of the book. He wrote an endorsement for my next book, even though the book is mostly arguing against his atheistic theory.
Well, he co-wrote the book and did a blurb for it, and that's what it's called, by the way. It's a blurb, Mr. Author.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
that okay. Great. Buy my DVDs, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least we're
I don't think that's a blurb though.
when you do
The short description is the blurb. What he's talking about is the endorsements, the
I don't know, maybe it's a language barrier thing. I've always heard those referred to as blurbs and the description is the synopsis.
No, the synopsis is the complete breakdown kind of thing. A blurb is a sort of short summary, a short promotional summary that you find on the back of a book. That's what a blurb is. I'm sure of that.
Okay, it could very well be I'm mistaken. It's been known to happen from time to time.
I don't know, because I just like the word blurb.
It is a fun word. It's almost as much fun as particle.
Oh, it includes it in there. Okay, I'm just looking it up now. So it includes it in there. Because usually you'll put the endorsements on the back kind of thing. Do you know what the best one, so it is included in the blurb, is the, Dan Barker. So it says, one of the best books about Christianity, Dan Barker, and it quotes them. That's included in the blurb. So it's still called the blurb. So you are right. You are absolutely right. Yeah.
I am vindicated.
Yeah. So the book endorsement on the back is the blurb, which is good. Do you know the best one I've ever heard?
For a blurb endorsement kind of thing?
Yeah, so endorsements are sometimes called blurbs. So blurbing someone's book, I'm saying blurb way too much. It's losing all meaning. It means writing an endorsement. The use of the word blurb shouldn't be confused with its other book-related meaning, which is the short book description, such as the one found on the back of the book. Okay, so we're both right, which is crazy. All right, that's weird. The best endorsement, or the best blurb I've ever heard, was on Banksy's book of his art, and it was like the quotation was, "You will never get a quote from us for your book," and it was the which was it? Where was he? The Bristol Police Department.
Oh, I love it. I love that so much.
Yeah. So he basically called up to get a quote, and they said, "You'll never get a quote from us for your book."
Well, there we go. That's what they said.
There we go. That's the quote. I love, and I've been to Bristol. I've seen Banksy's art. There's something just amazing about it. He did take inspiration from a French guy who drew rats all the time, but his art there's something about it that it's incredible, like it just really speaks to me. I love Banksy's art. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think the guy is a genius.
Hell yeah, good shit. I didn't even know there was a book, but we are way off topic.
Yeah.
It's been known to happen.
Well, in this debate, I'm arguing for mere theism, that there is a God. So,
not even mere Christianity. The PhD reverend with the convincing proof isn't going to go. Nope. Just the okay. It's fine. I'm down for theism too. It's okay.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be arguing for Christianity or the Bible, only that there is a supreme being. But first, let me tell you a little bit about my journey.
Whenever I hear this, I get reminded of something called the Mott and Bailey fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
It automatically, I suspect that's what they will do, because they don't want you to accept there's any God out there, some sort of deistic God kind of thing. They want you to accept the Christian God, but they're quite happy to, in an argument where their ground is shaky for the Christian God, is just go to some God somewhere that has, you know, no pin downable properties, that could be anything, just a mind that does something out there. Because the Christian God is a lot more falsifiable than some vague, you know, some God that never touches base in reality kind of thing. Like, it's wild how much they retreat.
Oh, for sure. That's a it's a thing. Yes, Patty. I can never remember for sure which one uses the Apostate Sisters account. Patty and Nancy were just on Godless Grannies today. Make sure to check that out. But yes, there's a
Patty
one of
uses
the
Apostate Sisters. It's Patty.
Yeah. Nancy has to do her own thing. Anyway, right. There's a video out for members, like I mentioned earlier. It will go public, but members get it first. And that's in there. This whole thing about well, yeah, Mott and Bailey specifically, but in this case, Frank Turek does this. Norman Geisler, who we learned today was a sex predator. That's fun. He did that. They'll make this case like, oh, I'm not defending Christianity today. I'm only going to defend theism. And then once he thinks he's got you on board with theism, then he'll be like, okay, now we have to identify who's the most likely God. And then he'll try to drag you into Christianity. It's on the plus side.
If you're unfamiliar with the Mott and Bailey fallacy, it's kind of it's making statements of a strong position, like for instance, saying, oh, my wife left the other day and I know she's cheating on me, kind of thing, right? And you make a very strong position, but when you actually come to defend it, you retreat to a much more easily convincing position, like, oh, but she left the other day and she didn't tell me where she was going, kind of thing, and I'm gonna support that position instead. So it's kind of this retreat to something more easily defensible when your strong thing gets questioned. And I'm not necessarily saying he's doing it here, but it does remind me of that, because what we've got to remember is that he's going to go out and he's not going to advocate for some random God. He's going to advocate for his God, the Christian, the classical Christian God.
Mm-hmm. In on the plus side, left-handed Jedi, a master of the Force, has been a member for 13 months. I appreciate
absolutely.
That. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And also,
left-handed Jedi, you're awesome.
Sent a super chat for $10 just because. Thank you so much, Jedi. And I mean, just because is a great reason. It's ontologically justified.
I presuppose.
Yes.
Because I've had enough with presuppositions. Like, I'll be back at it. I'm gonna go back on there. I'm certainly not afraid. I think I think I did really well, but I'll see how it goes. I definitely want to get back on there.
I think so too. Now, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen Mark's video, because it's a trip, but there's one part in there where after Psi 10 retreats, one of the channel hosts says, Mark, rules imply a rule maker. And then, like, the next sentence, he says, you're making your own rules, Mark. I'm like, Mark's been promoted to godhood. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So praise Mark. Send cookies or something.
When it comes to belief in God. I grew up in rural Nebraska, where most everybody seemed to believe in God, though nobody ever talked about him. And so when I grew up and went to university, I had wondered if maybe when I go to university, what I'll find there is that the most educated folks, the professors, would all be atheists. And it was just us rural farmers, us rural Nebraska folk that believed in God. When I went to university, first in my family to do so, I did have some professors who were atheists, but I also had some professors who were theists. On the first day of astronomy, Dr. Gaskell, after he explained his academic credentials, he told us that the most important thing he had found in his research is God. For philosophy, I had world-famous philosopher Robert Audi, who's been well known in the field of epistemology and moral intuitionism. He's been president of the American Philosophical Association and president of the Society of Christian Philosophers. So I realized that there are very intellectual, educated people who believe in God, and many educated people, intelligent, who don't believe in God.
And do you suppose that a person being educated and being a theist means that God is real and we should discount the other educated person who isn't a theist?
Right.
Like, what are we doing here? Cherry picking?
Yeah. No, it's an appeal to authority is what it is. So you're basically you're basically saying, hey, because this person has an expertise in this area, they have to be right about something unrelated or something that's not the same. So it's like the best one I can point out is Sir Isaac Newton, who was a genius by all accounts. There is no doubting he made calculus. He absolutely came up with the gravitational laws. Absolute genius and very good at what he did. But he was also an alchemist. He thought he could change lead into gold. He had some erroneous beliefs, and he believed in God, which a lot of people did at the time, but that doesn't necessarily make him right. So whenever I'm seeing people, and they do it a lot, quote Isaac Newton on God, it's like, well, yeah, he was a great mind and physicist, but that intelligence doesn't necessarily make you right about everything.
Oh yeah, in some ways it actually makes you, it's difficult, right? There's a saying that the more intelligent you are, the easier you are to fool, because you're convinced of your own ability to not be fooled. And the only defense is to be aware that you're as easy to fool as anyone else. So be careful of that. And when you get caught up in your own big head, smart people can do dumb things. It happens. And thank you, Big Bed Mama. I appreciate that. I really like this hat. It's not my favorite hat, but I really like it. I could go on about hats for a while, so I'll just stop there.
I knew even in college that it's not a good reason to believe in something just because there are some smart people who also believe it. So I wanted to dive into this topic. I really wanted to understand why different people believed in God and why others didn't. At first, all I could find was stuff at the popular level, what today is mostly on the internet, basically garbage, just bad arguments, right?
The irony. Zoom.
I'm sure you will have amazing arguments. Having said that I would expect you to have like incredibly succinct and powerful arguments coming out.
Oh yes, we're setting the bar. Absolutely.
Right, for God, bad arguments against God. Atheist and theist, mostly just making fun of each other, attacking character instead of arguments, not really listening to each other, just making overly bold
strategy. This is a weird strategy. It's kind of, hey, I feel like he's trying to pump his own arguments up by comparison. Like if you want to look thin, stand next to a fat person kind of thing, like that doesn't actually work, and B, it's silly. What?
It seems to be he's setting up, I'm not entirely sure if he's going for a false dichotomy or a straw man, but he's definitely positioning for something, because he's trying to create this equivalency that theism and atheism are equally justifiable ideas.
Well, it's odd because he seems to be poor arguments for theism and atheism. Atheists disagree among themselves, so atheism is false. We don't disagree. Like, atheism doesn't disagree among itself because it's not a belief system. It's not a system of structured beliefs. It's just a position on one proposition, and that's a non-belief in God. So no, they don't disagree with one another on atheism, like theists disagree with each other on theism, i.e. their beliefs on theism all are different, right? They're what they believe about that. But the idea that theism is false or atheism is false is a nonsensical statement. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't say theism is false because theism is a belief. Like, you can say there is no God or you are wrong about your beliefs, but I know I'm nitpicking, but it doesn't really make sense to say, hey, you believe that God exists, that is wrong. Like, you can say you're in error, but the belief exists. Like, that they have that belief. So it's so weird. And the whole point is that atheists don't disagree on that principle. They all don't believe in a God.
Yeah. I don't think it is nitpicky because it looks like it's the foundation of a category error. But I mean, we'll see.
Confident claims, straw men, rattling off 100 things just to make their opponent look silly instead of dealing with the best arguments. But thankfully, as I continued,
could you name that strategy, please? Could you name that?
The best, only the freshest arguments.
No. Rattling off 1,000 things, so you can't keep it. What's the name of that? Would that be the Gish Gallop? Would that be the Gish Gallop? Popularized by Wayne Gish. Pretty sure he wasn't an atheist. Pretty sure. I'm just needling a bit. Just
yeah.
Feisty,
but as the good pastor, PhD person, properly pointed out, there's a lot of arguments on the internet, and every single argument you can think of, someone on the internet is executing it badly.
Researching and thinking about this belief, I eventually found a community where atheists and theists work together in this field, listen to each other, and deal with the best arguments for and against God. I was so thankful to find a community.
Who decides what's the best idea? Whatever. I'm not going to get into that one. It's a whole meta argument thing. Like, should we include this argument? And then they have a debate over the merits of the argument and just...
Oh, the other one that's just awful is having a debate over definitions. Like, that is awful. I once was challenged to a debate on whether fascism was a right-wing or a left-wing ideology, which isn't really debatable. But the guy wanted a debate before the debate to debate the definitions of right and left-wing and the definitions of fascism, which I said, no, not at all.
Yeah, like, whatever.
There was a real push a few years ago to redefine left and right wing, basically. There was a real push for it, kind of thing, which was weird and odd, because we know what these things mean in socio-political sort of, academia, where we're aware of the ideas of hierarchy versus collectivism, kind of thing. We're very aware, and it's very odd for people to go, oh, well, I'm right wing, I want to redefine what right wing is and what left wing is, so fascism and communism falls under left wing. It's weird. It's very strange.
Yeah, that's very silly. I mean, it's not even like an absolute definition. Like, they shift around. No. They're relative to the Overton window. Like, I myself, I hold values very, very similar to the ones I held when I was 18 years old and in the U.S. military. I mean, by my standing, I'm a little bit conservative, but the Overton window has shifted so dramatically to the right over the decades that I'm more left-wing than Bernie these days.
Yeah. And I mean, it depends on the place as well. I mean, I consider myself a moderate over here. Like I'm more of a moderate, maybe leaning slightly to the left. But, in America, I'd be considered very far to the left just because the Overton window over here is more left than in America. Like our Conservative Party is more like the Republicans than the Democrats than the Republicans. Although that is changing, which is a little bit worrying, I must admit.
Yeah, American politics have a way of tainting everything.
Yeah,
I
well,
hope to get over that soon.
I've had a blackout for that. I've found myself so upset, and just watching it is, I don't know what's worse, the fires or the politics in America right now, quite frankly. And
The
I can
politics.
yeah, exactly. So, well, the fires are pretty bad,
Oh, yes.
It's pretty shocking, but yeah. So I've decided to, have a bit of a give myself a bit of a rest. I will keep up with it. Just I need a break because it is. Ugh.
Yes, absolutely. I did a little speech on the show earlier today, towards the end.
Okay.
I won't redo the whole speech, but the TLDR is
Yep.
you need to take care of yourself. You're no help to anybody if you burn out. Center yourself in stuff you can reasonably do locally. Resist where it makes sense to do so. And remember to make self-care a priority because you matter too, not just the news. So that's my preaching. Thanks for coming to church. We'll pass around the collection plate and let's get back to the show.
Community like that. And as you might have guessed, that community that I'm talking about is philosophy of religion and the philosophy of religion departments at universities all across the country. I wanted to join and be a part of that community, so I worked on my PhD in philosophy of religion and enjoyed studying the best arguments for and against the existence of God. Now I'd like to share with you why I believe that there is a God. Now, one of the things I'm fascinated by is that many different thinkers around the world throughout history have independently concluded that there is a God. They use different terms for their idea of a supreme being, but their descriptions of a supreme being are remarkably similar.
Well, that's sort of an important distinction, though, because if they're all arguing for a specific deity, that doesn't mean there just is a deity. They're all arguing that each other's idea is incorrect. So, it's just such a weird way to go about things.
It's kind of saying, hey, all of these people have ideas, and I see what he set up. He set up, a bad argument is they all disagree, therefore the idea of God is false. But you have all of these ideas of what God is, and they all vary. They're mutually exclusive with one another, especially with the Christian God we know that he believes in, except maybe Allah, because that has the same root in sort of, the Old Testament. So it kind of just is trying to say, hey, don't go too far into Christianity. I don't want to defend it. That's what it says to me.
And on top of that, a lot of these aren't a supreme being. They're from a pantheon, like ancient Egypt, for example. Zoroastrianism has multiple, it's like two gods, but whatever. Okay, Latin. Yeah, ancient Rome had a pantheon too. It isn't like a supreme being. And in fact, Zeus wasn't even depicted, or Jupiter wasn't even depicted as the supreme being, just happened to be like the chairman of the board of gods,
Yeah. The
little
father
sus.
of gods.
I'm watching you, Pastor Johnson person, whoever you are, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
For example, many of these thinkers throughout history around the world describe this supreme being as spaceless, timeless, immaterial.
Oh, William Lane
Get the fuck out of
Craig.
here. Get out of here.
Spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, creator, intelligent, source of morality. That is quite a list of things there that you haven't established was actually true. This almost is just an ad populum or an appeal to popularity, that all of these people have thought that.
But they haven't, though. Like,
right.
He's combining
yeah.
a bunch of different things. Like,
Mhm.
Jupiter from the Roman pantheon. Nobody said he's spaceless, timeless, immaterial. None of, I mean, powerful, sure, but none of the other stuff. He's taking characteristics from what other people have called gods and putting them together and saying, oh, all these thinkers concluded this, when each thinker would argue for like one specific thing on that list and say all the rest are junk. It's
because
an illusion.
The Greek
it's a lie.
gods like Zeus and stuff were not immaterial, and they weren't really a source for morality. That's the thing.
No.
Like the gods did very immoral stuff. It was kind of, they weren't really a paradigm for morality. Spaceless, no, the Greek gods didn't fall into that. In fact, most of them that didn't fall into that. My audio connection is hitching slightly. Are you hearing a problem with my audio?
Yeah, you're catching and lagging little bits here and there. I thought it was my connection, honestly.
Give me 1 sec. I'll just see if I can.
But yeah, while you're working on that, it's I mean, throughout history, no, this whole spaceless, timeless bullshit, that's new. Like the ancient Christians, the Christians from the 1700s wouldn't agree to that. They're like, no, God is obviously in heaven. It says so right in scripture. What do you mean spaceless? Get out of here.
Right.
It's nonsense. And it drives me crazy because this is what makes the modern conception of the Christian God incoherent. Because what does it mean to be spaceless? To exist in a place that doesn't? More people have been to Berlin than I have. It doesn't actually make sense. Oh, goodness. And a similar thing is true for all the other stuff, like the source of morality. It's very similar to the source of logic or the source of math, but in every one of these cases, either it's subjective, it's coming from them based on their whim or decision or whatever, or they themselves are subject to a still higher power that's compelling. Either way, it doesn't actually work. And also intelligent.
Well, I did
have you heard from any of these gods? The shit that's in this book? Intelligent? Really?
Yeah.
The
weird thing is your audio is sort of occasionally glitching for me. What I might do is shut down my browser and come back in. Might be a good thing to do. That might be good. So I'll just duck out and see if I can rejoin, just to see if I can get the connection working right.
Sure. Yeah, the IT trick. Turn it off and turn it back on again.
Okay, sorry, just 1 sec. Look, we call it a power cycle because it sounds so much more professional and intricate. So we will power cycle the device, not turn it on and off, right? That sounds like you're just flicking a switch. Power cycle sounds like you're actually doing something technical, right? That's what we call it.
Okay. I won't debate Mark over definitions. While he's doing that, make sure you're subscribed to both channels because Mark and I do alternate every weekend. I know almost everyone here already is subscribed to both channels, but I have to do the pitch anyway. Next week, we'll be back over at Mark's place. The week after, we'll be back over here. There is a playlist somewhere. I've got a playlist for all the debates if you want to watch the past stuff, including the stuff with Sci 10. And the playlist does include stuff from both channels. So if you just run the playlist, you'll get to enjoy both of our respective domiciles.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that existed. Can I put that playlist on my channel?
Oh, sure. I'll actually go
Okay.
grab the link now. I think you
Please,
can.
yeah. That would be great. That would be fantastic. I didn't even think about that I could include in a playlist things from other people's channels. I didn't even consider
Yeah,
that. This is how much I know about YouTube. I know nothing about it. I keep telling people I've got no idea what I'm doing. They go, "No, you know," and it's like, no, I like, believe me, I'm not lying. Trust me.
Yeah,
Just trust
we're
me on this.
I mean, we all just work with what we've got. We do our best.
Hmm.
It's nifty.
Well, I was going to say I did a we did I did a thing for the Kentucky Atheist on the problems with objective morality kind of thing, and it was really good. I thank you, Ember. I really appreciate it. But there's sort of that the theists have sort of started to appeal to, because there's something called the Euthyphro dilemma, and that's the idea that does, and it goes all the way back to Socrates times kind of thing, and Plato, that they asked, Euthyphro basically asked, does God say what morality is, or does the morality come from somewhere else and he communicates it to us, right? So the whole idea is, and what he said is morality the thing that God loves, or is the thing that is it moral because God loves it, basically? It just means, does it come from what he says, or does it come from, is he relaying it from another source? And the whole thing is that in one way, if he's just saying what morality is, if he's dictating it to us, it's still subjective, and it can change. If he changes his mind, it will change. So it's subjective. If it comes from some other source, then all you're doing is kicking the can down the road, because you've got morality doesn't come from God, and he's just relaying it along. A lot of theists try to get around this by saying, oh, it comes from his nature. It's just a part of his nature is what is moral. And the problem with that is that whatever God has done in the Bible is in his nature. So, all of that becomes permissible, because that God can't do things that are not in his nature. It's, that is nonsensical. So it's perfectly fine. Like, if you're getting it from God's nature, then wiping out a tribe is perfectly moral, because that is in his nature.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and also, what rules determined his nature?
Right. And God doesn't have control over his nature, which is weird, because, I have control over my nature. I can choose to, be an arsehole or be a good person. I can choose what to do with my nature.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all do have some control over our nature, but apparently God's got no control whatsoever. So it becomes weird. Anyway, I just want to go through that, and it's just, yeah.
No, it's fair. It's one more way out of the many that we should be keeping a list. But this is several times we found little notes, ways that mortals are more powerful than gods. And the least of these is that we create gods. We've observed that, we've documented that. We have never seen a god create people. So that,
real, powerful, creator of everything, intelligent, and the source of morality. It's not a coincidence that they came to these similar conclusions, because they arrived at them through a similar thought process. That is, by observing and reflecting upon the world around them. This similar thought process I'm talking about are these three theistic type of arguments, which arrive at similar conclusions about what this supreme being is like. The three arguments I'm talking about are first cause arguments, design arguments, and moral arguments.
Okay. So we've got, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, it's just funny to me that we both picked the same spot. We're like, we'll let him say his thing, and then boom.
Yep. So we want to identify these. We've got cosmological, we've got teleological, and we've got good old tag, transcendental argument. So these are basically, there's nothing new about this. I like how he's using non-philosophical language. That's essentially what it means. First cause is basically the universe had to come from somewhere. It's a cosmological argument.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, any kind of design, is teleological. It basically is the watchmaker argument. Oh, it's all so complicated, or it had to be designed kind of thing. That is a teleological argument. And moral says that transcendent moral facts come from somewhere kind of thing. And that's the transcendental. It's that transcendent things come from God. I don't think transcendent is very strange. I don't think that when we say transcendent, just because something bridges two states kind of thing doesn't mean that it comes from a God. So I think that's really poor. That's a really poor argument, because things can transcend. Like, for instance, they often refer to maths as transcendental, or morality transcendental, or the laws of logic transcendental. To me, they're kind of pseudo-concretes. They're like, math is a language that describes things, and the thing it describes is real, very real, because they're real objects, but it's not really, math isn't really real itself. Same with the laws of logic, I think.
Yeah, like as we've all described it repeatedly. These things are all they're partly arbitrary and they're partly descriptive. There is no proscription to any of these. Like, there are cultures in the world where murder is just fine in some circumstances. In fact, in Christian cultures, there's some circumstances where murder is noble or honorable. Like in not that long ago, gentlemen would go out and duel to settle disputes,
Right.
Ay. But another good way to settle disputes is to gift Emberships, like left-handed Jedi.
There you go. Woohoo!
I'm so good at transitions today.
Wow, those silky smooth.
Absolutely. This is why I get
Segue.
paid, whatever the pennies YouTube sends me for ads. Those went to Judia, Mark, right-handed Sith Smith, Sydney Raptor, Hunter Biden's laptops, Jake, insert clever dapper inside joke here, Nelson. Is that all 5? That's all 5. Cuddly Unicorn was already green. So, but yes, congratulations, folks. Enjoy your fun free emojis, the member exclusive content, and whatever other stuff I have. I don't even know all the various perks, but those are 2 of them. Occasionally I even do a member stream when there's time, but I'm working a lot of jobs right now. I'm trying to cut back, but when there's time. Anyway, thank you, Jedi. I appreciate that very much. Yay. Little capitalism break.
Yep.
And my unfinished journey sends 666. Thank you so much. And says, hail Nero, hail Ember and Mark, and hail balance in the force.
There you go.
Absolutely. We love to see it. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
As all things should be. I was thinking the same thing. Well, look, just because he's a bad guy doesn't mean he didn't have a point. He had a point. It
He
just
sure
the
did.
way that he carried it out was absolutely terrible. Like,
Definitely. He could have done a better job. He could have.
Oh yeah.
I mean, fixing the birth rate would have been a more long-term solution. Like, just make all living beings half as fertile. Problem solved.
Well, even that's a bit dodgy, because if some race is struggling to survive, then that they might go extinct, kind of thing.
Yep. The lesson here is that blanket solutions are lazy, especially when you have godlike power.
But he could have achieved the same effect by just doubling all the resources in the galaxy.
It's less dramatic that way, though. We have to keep these stones away from the purple guy, because he's going to double the amount of oil in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Yep.
How rude.
This book documents how these arguments can be found around the world throughout history by different thinkers. I'll just give you a few examples. You're probably familiar with Plato. He argued that from the motion of the stars and all the things under the dominion of the mind which ordered the universe, he concluded there's a best soul, a maker and father of all, the king. Similarly, Aristotle argued that there's a first unmoved mover, a living, intelligent, immaterial, eternal, most good being who is the source of order in the cosmos.
Okay, real quick, because it's come up twice today, so let's make it a third time. Third time's a charm. Aristotle also said that women are defective men, but it's a natural thing.
And so, and the idea that there must be an unmoved mover, like this is very, 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 he's conflating, and I think he's being a bit deceptive, I'll be honest with you, because an unmoved mover doesn't mean a god. He means that there must have been some instantiation of something that did not have a cause, right? That just was there from the start. I don't think he said it was a living, immaterial, eternal, good being. I don't think so.
Yeah, the
But
good being
being
thing was Platonius, who came later. He was a
correct,
student of Aristotle's.
correct, yes, and the being doesn't necessarily mean, like in philosophy, being doesn't mean like human being. Like when people say, "Hey, the being that caused the universe," in philosophy, being means a state of being. Now, it can mean an agent, right? Like so what we would refer to as an intelligent entity with that can act, has agency, that would be an agent. A being is just a state of being, a how things are, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean any kind of person. So I think this is very misleading, because Aristotle saying there was a being, an unmoved being, I don't think he was necessarily saying there was a God, and I don't think it was a Christian God.
Oh, definitely not. It's very wild. But this
Mm.
concept that anything could be a being as long as it, bees, then whether there is a separate individual entity, agenthood notwithstanding, like your Blarney Stone, you also have to have time in order for it to be eternal. So time itself becomes that thing that has to be there, or at least it makes it two things that have to be there, because you need the time for the thing. And also, we did it a long time ago, but C.S. Lewis poses a similar first mover argument using a chicken and an egg scenario. He actually uses an owl and an egg, but that's neither here nor there. He says, the owl lays the egg turns into the owl lays the egg, and this creates an eternal cycle, an infinite regress, unless we propose a creator who either made an egg or an owl. Now, we know that's a false solution. The actual solution is evolution. They got that way through gradual steps and progression.
Yeah.
The same thing applies to every single first mover argument. The only reason anybody ever gets to it is they do not like infinite regress. But when you run into an infinite regress, that doesn't mean you get to just make up your own solution to it. It means you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. You need to take the problem and turn it a little bit and see, or zoom out and see what else you may be missing. That's all it means, is you're missing something.
But we don't know. Like, we don't know if infinite regress is actually a thing. We don't know if that's no problem whatsoever in the universe. We just don't know enough about the universe to know if that's even a thing, or whether there was an unmoved state of the universe, like a quantum field where time does not exist. But in that case, using the word eternal would be misleading, because what eternal suggests is that it occupies all of time. I would posit that a better word is atemporal, like time doesn't exist at all. So in one sense, it's instantaneous. There is no time. And in another sense, it goes for all time, because time, that like sort of what's before time is a nonsensical question.
Right. And yeah, I've often said, we don't actually have a reason to say no infinite regress. We just don't like it.
Yeah.
I think there is actually a reason, but no theist has ever managed to articulate it to me. So I'm just going with it. But one thing that has been articulated to me, I'm so smooth today. I did manage. There was a boil water notice in my town. I haven't been able to take a shower for days, and I took one today, and it was warm, and it feels good. Anyway, super
Nice.
cool. My Unfinished Sock sends $2. Thank you so much. And says, do not regress infinitely. Like and share instead. And that's good,
Right.
good advice for everyone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's deep. That's deep. And plus, like, there's other solutions. Like, what about a cyclical time stream that loops back upon itself and just keeps going around and around? It's like saying that, like, that infinite distances don't exist, but if you walk, you can walk infinitely on the earth and always and never end. Right? You can go round in a circle, kind of thing. So
yeah, closed
I'm not
infinity.
right. I'm not saying this is true. Like, I don't believe it's true because there's no evidence for it, but it is one possibility. And the thing you've got to remember about when they posit this God, or they posit a first mover, or they posit any of this stuff, is they're using deduction. So they're basically saying there's no other option than a God, right? That's the argument that they're using. All you have to do to break that is bring up one other option. And if they're really deceptive, they'll say, well, do you believe that? It doesn't matter. What matters is their argument is there has to be a God because there's no other way to explain this. All you have to do is say, hey, I don't know, but here's another option. How did you eliminate that possibility? That's all you've got to do, because they're relying on there being no other possibility whatsoever.
Incredulity is a hell of a drug. Or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just Western thinkers either. Eastern philosophers throughout history have made similar arguments. Of the title of this book, this Hindu thinker, A Handful of Flowers of Logic, he gives 8 arguments for the existence of God, the first 4 of which are first cause arguments. More recently, Gandhi published several articles arguing for the existence of God, first cause arguments, design arguments, and moral arguments.
I really hope he has something better than this, because he's like going through his presentation. He's like, hey, a whole bunch of people believed something sort of kind of like what I believe, so I'm correct. You know, what are we doing? Do you have an actual argument, or are you just going to put, well, Gandhi thought so. Gandhi thought not eating was a good way to do business, my guy. Now, that doesn't mean he's wrong about this argument, but like, what? Make your own argument instead of gesturing vaguely at other people who once made arguments.
Yeah. And we know that humans have a propensity to believe in things that do not exist. You can point to all the people that believed in fairies throughout the ages. That doesn't make it true. Like, and if you want to argue, oh, but not a lot of people believe in fairies now, you're doing you're doing a popularity thing. Like, that's all he's doing, is saying, hey, a lot of people throughout the ages believed in this thing. So we know that humans have a tendency to ascribe to that which we don't understand agency.
That's where religion came from in the first place. You know, we started with animism and ancestor worship. We're saying, oh, this lucky thing happened. I'm being watched over by the spirits of those who came before. You know, all that kind of crap.
Right.
I have pleased the volcano.
Or I don't know what that lightning is. It must be somebody destroying things. How could that just come about without somebody attacking me? You know, like I've said in the past, like you sort of say, well, when we say, hey, lightning isn't personal, but when you're some tribes person in the Paleolithic era and you get, your friend gets hit by lightning, it sure would feel personal. It would feel really personal.
Yeah, it's like that meme photo where it's a lightning striking off the Atlantic coast, and the caption reads, fuck these 6 fish in particular.
Yeah. Absolutely. It feels personal, right? Like, so we ascribe that meaning to it, which may not be true.
Yeah. And also, this particular, the quote he puts in here, the law which governs all of life is God. Law and lawgiver are one. This is basically almost a Trojan source kind of thing, because the argument he's quoting to support his argument that all these people made the same kinds of arguments makes a different argument. So it's removing itself, because this is more like a panpsychism psychism sort of thing. You know, the universe is God. The universe exists, therefore God exists. Well, now you're just changing the definition. You're saying there's order in the universe, therefore God, but you're missing
It's
that
odd
middle step.
because it's almost like Spinoza's God, who he thought God was the physics, the actual natural workings of the universe kind of thing, right? He thought that God was the laws that the universe operated by, but it wasn't a person. It was just the laws of the universe.
Yeah. It's and again, the laws are our descriptions. There's a little bit of arbitrariness to it, but it's mostly observation. The fact that we call them laws is our choice. We could have called them the principles of the universe. You know, it's there's
the
so much,
the properties of the universe. Yeah. It is not a blind law, for no blind law can govern the conduct of living beings. Well, I disagree with that. I think just properties of the universe can govern how beings operate, and we see this in animals all the time. We see, you know, in more difficult environments, animals are a lot more ruthless and you know, prone to savagery.
Oh, for sure.
I'd take Australia as an example.
Yeah. I mean, I take issue with the orderliness in the universe. Like that's also assuming your conclusion. Like I've again, stuff that's been said many times on this channel, but you know, every video is somebody's first video. The order we perceive in the universe could be described as the difference between the maximum possible entropy and the actual observed entropy. That gap looks like order. That isn't necessarily what's happening, but it's a possibility. And another possibility is Left-Handed Jedi sending a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. And says, 2 things I don't get. In what way are we made in God's image? And what is the definition of a God?
Well, I think it depends on who you talk to, Left-Handed Jedi. I mean, I think in no way are we made in God's image. I think God's image is made, God is made in the image of us. I think that we assign all of the things to God as we would like to have ourselves. I think that people will create their idea of God around what they want to be. Like, it is kind of an ego thing. So if somebody wants to be powerful, God will be powerful. If they want to be vengeful, God will be vengeful. If they want to be loving, God will be loved. You know, they will just create God in the image of themselves. So, but that it varies so much between people what God's image actually is. I think most Christians would say that spiritually we're made, which is nonsense to me, but kind of morally we're made in God's image, that we have some capacity to be this thing. But I think it's more people projecting what they want to be into this God. Definition of a God depends on who you ask. Again, some people say it has to be the creator of the universe. I don't. I think it just has to be some kind of agent with sufficient power to change the inherent properties of the universe in such a way to have dominion over them. That's all I think it is. So it depends who you ask, mate. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, as Guitar Dog just points out, Caesar was a god, according to the Roman, and you know, pharaohs have been gods. So it doesn't even need to be somebody who isn't mortal. Like, you don't have to be immortal. You just need to have enough power to exercise some kind of will on the world by certain definitions, including one given by Jesus fucking Christ, according to ye old book of fables. All of you are gods. And you can make a case for it, because humans have an unprecedented capability for changing the world, for making a difference in reality. We're not even limited to this world. We've shot shit off into the depths of space. The Voyager probes are still going, you know?
Well, I've often thought about, like, you know, an ant would probably consider us a god. It's all a matter of scope, you know, like it's all a matter of you know, I'm sure an ant would go, well, this can't possibly be anything but a god. I don't, it's just, well, if we find an alien race that can terraform Earths and change their DNA and do all of these things, what separates that from a god in classical theism kind of thing, or Stargate, basically? You have these incredibly powerful aliens, and they're worshipped as the Egyptian gods, and I can understand why, because it's just a matter of scope. If they're so powerful, of course we view them as gods, but we know better now. To somebody living in the Paleolithic era, we would be gods. We would have these things that would, change. We can look up things on our little device in our hand and make planes come out of nowhere, and just it would be insane to them.
Yeah, I mean, check this one out. Let there be light.
Yeah.
Godlike power. Now I can't turn it off. There we go. I broke the universe, folks.
Oh no.
So Andrew, the order of creation is nil. The great not God and creator of creator gods created all the creator gods. And then Lisa the rainbow giraffe came along and ate all the creator gods and pooped out the universe.
Right.
That's how that works.
Was the Blarney Stone in that mix?
It could be.
Okay.
Lisa the rainbow giraffe had to stand somewhere in order to, eat something. My Unfinished Journey says it should be noted that the Caesars were considered to be elevated to godhood after they died. So first you had to be mortal, and then you became immortal, which is a weird way to be eternal. It's eternal in one direction.
Isn't that what Jesus did?
Some say. I have my doubts.
He wrote, for example, there's an orderliness in the universe. There's an unalterable law. That law, then, which governs all of life, is God. Law and lawgiver are one. Now I'm going to give you some contemporary versions of these arguments. I'll be brief, but here is a resource that I often give people that gets more into the nitty-gritty, more of the scientific details behind these arguments. It's written by Stephen Barr, physics professor at the University of Delaware. And I give this out often because it covers more of the scientific details behind the arguments. The first argument that I'm going to cover is a contemporary version of the first cause argument. So here it goes, just a nutshell, basic version of it. Premise one.
We're really dipping into the Craig well tonight, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting to talk about what's fundamental to the universe, because you often get what's your foundation, what's fundamental. I saw a video, I can't remember the physicist's name, but he was talking about how we keep looking smaller and smaller to try and find out what's fundamental. We keep going down and trying to find out. But what actually may be fundamental may be the entire thing. That all of these electrons in this field is like waves kind of thing. They're centered in some places, they're thinner in others. It's like waves everywhere. A wave of electron field, which is sort of a quantum field. And that they're all connected in a way that we can't sort of observe with our ordinary senses, that they're sort of linked in this way. The fundamental thing may in fact be the entire universe, and we're looking smaller to try and find fundamental particles where the entire thing may be the fundamental thing. And it boggles the mind. It makes you go, what? But it was interesting. And I don't think he was saying it absolutely is, but it's almost like a quantum monism, that the elementary particle is not something small, it is the whole thing. And that is wild to me. But it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's one of the weird things. So there's two different schools of thought in physics, right? There's everything is a particle, and then there's nothing is a particle.
Yeah.
And when I went through school, I went nothing is a particle. All particles are basically just waves that are caught in a point in space and move through time the same way we do, because we're made of particles.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, in a certain perspective, what makes time go. it's just all these waves moving in the same direction along what the plane we perceive as time as we are.
Yeah.
You know, if we shifted direction or shifted our arrow of time's direction, these particles would be just energy waves, and everything moving in that direction we would perceive as particles. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, at the most basic level, and this is what I did. I forget if it was my first or second dissertation on, but it's not important. Everything that we perceive as a particle is basically a partial photon. If you take an electron and a positron, they will annihilate into two electromagnetic waves, usually gamma rays. If you collide the gamma rays, you get an electron and a positron. Now, they'll usually immediately annihilate again. 5 Nobel Prizes have been won demonstrating that they do this in various different ways. But the TLDR is there are no electrons. The electron is just half a photon. It's just like the electromagnetic wave, just a disturbance in time-space, the field of space. It's just a dip. That's all it is. It's not a particle. It's a dip. And the same is true of everything else. Every boson and fermion, they're just distortions from the neutral of time-space.
Right.
So
which it's so hard, like wrapping my head around that. It's cool. Don't get me wrong, and thank you for saying that, because that adds to my little pocket of thinking about stuff. I'm sure I'll be thinking about that the entire day. But like that's so cool. That is so awesome. But it's also like, well, we're not going to find a fundamental particle because the entire thing is the fundamental thing. The entire universe is the base thing. It's I think you read what you want to read. Like, you go for it, Jedi.
I mean, it's kind of true. Like, from that perspective, there is nothing but time space and disturbances in it, you know? Anyway, we're a ways off track. So he's gonna make the William Lane Craig version of the Kalam modal whatever blah blah blah, and he'll do it in a very non-philosophy bro way, I'm sure. And then we will point out that he's very, very wrong. But let's let him do it. Let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's let him do the thing first. Maybe he'll add something new. You never know.
Maybe.
1, whatever has a beginning must have a cause. Premise 2, the universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. A contemporary advocate of this argument is Dr. Robert Coons, a philosophy professor at the University of Texas, if you want to dig down deeper into this argument. I'm just giving the bare nutshell version today. Now, you might notice with this argument, a lot of people notice, I thought this was an argument for God. It doesn't end with God. It just ends with a cause. Why do people think this cause is God? Well, many thinkers have concluded that the best explanation for this cause is some sort of a supreme being through abductive reasoning.
We're just going to skip over the no justification for the argument itself. No. I mean, even Craig goes into, well, the universe had the science today. Atheists are admitting that the universe had a beginning, and we see it in the Big Bang and yada yada. No.
Oh. And plus, can I just point out that this is the Kalam. Like, it's not William Lane Craig's sort of, souped up version that he puts out. It is the original Kalam. Nowhere does that say that a God is involved. I have problems with premise 1, premise 2, and the conclusion, which is 3, doesn't conclude with God.
Yeah, so it's not even fucking relevant. But I don't care for it because, like, I mean, first of all, there's a composition division fallacy, right? Whatever within the universe that has a beginning must have a cause. That rule doesn't necessarily apply to the whole universe. The universe had a beginning. Well, no. What do you mean by that? The universe includes, like, time and space is the definition of the universe. That's all that there is. So you have to have time to have a universe. So you can't create time without time. You can't create something that already exists, and for creation to have any meaning, time is already running. So it's already there, so you can't create it. And the same thing applies to space, because they're fundamentally the same thing as per general relativity. And you can't create the first law of thermodynamics. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. They were there since the beginning too. They're only changing forms. So in what way, Dr. Anthony Reverend Johnson, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Floyd, person, whatever the fuck your name is, does any of this apply to the universe? You know, it's a really bad argument, and it pisses me off all the time. Anyhow,
through reasoning, like an inference to the best explanation. Similarly, that's how we often think through things.
Oh, okay. How do we get from the universe had a cause, which we've already determined is both unsound and invalid, but whatever, to God, a seeming non sequitur? Well, it's inference to the best explanation, which is to say, I picked my favorite option.
And he basically said that he appealed to abduction. Now, just for those out there that don't understand the different types of argument, you've got inductive arguments, deductive arguments, and abductive arguments. Deductive arguments are sort of, well, if nobody else could commit the murder, nobody else was there, and there's no other possibility, it's got to be this person, right? That's a deductive argument. You're basically eliminated all the other possibilities. An inductive argument is saying, hey, we've got his hair and his fingerprints and his, all of this evidence, and it points to this person, right? Like you're basically, you're using understanding of how events cause and effect, show that is the correct answer. Abductive is basically going, well, the best probability, because of this person was from this, socioeconomic class, they were down on their luck and didn't have a lot of money. So abductively, they're the most probable to have committed the murder. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that that's no reliable way to get to the truth. We don't put people on trial because they probably did it. Like, that is not a way to get to the truth. Abductive arguments have their place, but this, like, how can you get a sample size of 1, the universe, and say that God is the most probable explanation? How many universes have you seen?
All of them, asterisk.
Yeah, it's sample size of 1. If I flip a coin, I can determine it will always come down heads. Why? I flipped it once and it came down heads. That's 100% of the time.
Hooray!
But not only that, you're also assuming that you're assuming the conclusion in your premises that God created the universe. Therefore, it's the most. I want to know how he got his probabilities out of this. It's baffling.
Oh, I need one of those clips. I made it the fuck up.
Yeah.
A lot of possibilities.
You're right. He just chose his favorite. That's it. That's all that he did.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason this argument exists in the first place is because they had a conclusion, and they're like, all right, we need to construct a way to get to this conclusion,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that we see something.
Yes, excusegetics.
Thing happen. We think through, there's all sorts of possibilities of what that could be, but what's the best explanation of it? That's the abductive reasoning that I'll be using. For example, since the universe itself, the universe just is space, time, and matter, then those things didn't exist until the universe began. Therefore, it's reasonable.
Is she?
That's not quite correct there, sir. Space-time is one thing. It's not space, time, and matter. And it's kind of space-time and energy. I don't like the way that they're framing this sort of thing. It's not great.
Yeah, it seems like a trap. But yeah, I mean, it's a non sequitur to say these things must have begun to exist. Like, I mean, I could get into the whole thing about how the expansion necessitates a continuum, but that's a long tangent.
Okay.
TLDR, there's nothing in this that says it couldn't have pre-existed the expansion event that we call the Big Bang and just been doing something else. Maybe it was another universe. Maybe it was something we don't even have the parameters to conceptualize, but it doesn't matter because we don't know that nothing existed. Like, that's not indicated by any stretch of the imagination.
But it's important to remember when you're in these discussions is that we're not claiming to know where the universe came from. We're not claiming, hey, there's this person, this magic person that created, they're the ones with the burden of proof because they're making the claim. We're saying, hey, we don't know where the universe came from, but there's absolutely no reason to think it was a god and a lot of reasons to think that it wasn't. So, you know, you've got to remember that you don't have to show where the universe came from instead. You just have to say, hey, we don't know. Be honest, because we don't.
That's sort of their issue, though. If you say, I don't know, then you have to admit that you don't know.
To conclude that this cause, which existed prior to space, time, and matter, is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Also, I think it's reasonable to conclude this cause is very powerful, since he brought the universe into existence.
Hey, bit of loaded language there, son. A bit of he thrown in there. Who said it was a he?
He's definitely leaning away from theism at this point. He has a very specific answer in mind. I mean, he's smuggling everything in here at this point.
Oh,
he's like,
yeah,
well, I mean, it must have been powerful because, you know.
Moving on quickly now, I know this is going to have to be brief, but here's a basic version of the design argument. Sometimes it's called the fine-tuning argument. The first premise says we've only ever seen design come from an intelligent mind.
That's
not true.
Well, it depends on what you define as design, and it's sort of creating a circle. If you're saying, you know, the product of an intelligent mind done with intention, that is design. We've only ever seen design come from an intelligent mind. Well, yeah, it's part of the definition that you just said. It's a circle.
Yeah, I think also, like, if you're saying fine-tuning, right? The evidence of design is fine-tuning. So we've only seen fine-tuning come from an intelligent mind, and that's not true. We've seen evolution produce fine-tuning, right? Like, life is fine-tuned for the environment around it, and that isn't using an intelligent mind. It's just using a process of selection. So we have actually seen evidence of if you want to define fine-tuning as evidence of design, then we have seen evidence of design come from a non-intelligent mind because microbes manage it all the time. They're fine-tuned for their environment. And
true, evolution produces fine-tuning as in the form of adaptation. That's why we're so well fit for our environments, which is why we need artificial caves to live in, because I'd freeze to death if I didn't have it. Super fine-tuned, but details. But there's so much that just really pisses me off about that, because, like, hopefully, I'm sure he has evidence for design. He's not just going to brush past it like he did every other point he's made so far.
Oh, he absolutely will. Yeah, no, he absolutely
but
will.
Like, what do you mean evidence of design? Like, as we often talk about, like, the human eye is wired backwards and has a blind spot. Who is designing this? And how are you arguing that's an intelligent agent, you know?
Yeah, the recurrent laryngeal nerve goes the entire way down a giraffe's neck and back up to cross a space that's a few inches long. Like, it's bad design. Horrible, the worst design you could possibly come up with.
The
universe has evidence of design. This is that fine-tuning, why it's called that. Therefore, the universe was designed by an intelligent mind. A contemporary proponent of design arguments is Francis Collins.
Francis! It's been a moment since you showed up, my friend. So Francis Collins, as you may recall, is one of the people behind the Human Genome Project. He, like John Sanford, did actually do some science stuff before he went off his rocker into La La Land. His conversion story is so shitty that when he gets up to speak, he borrows a story from C.S. Lewis to substitute for his own.
Well, I don't think he's gone off his rocker. He's just, gotten, as we say in Australia, he's jumped on the God bus, mate. Like he's not as bad as Sanford, because Sanford went YEC and Francis Collins isn't, right? He absolutely knows that evolution is a thing because he's worked on the Human Genome Project. He absolutely knows for sure. Now, he sort of says a lot of these systems, the design came from a god, but I don't believe that's the case. I really don't think so. I really don't. But, he's allowed to believe that. He's not going to publish a paper on it, because he understands that if you can't prove something, you can't publish it. You can't publish something that has no evidence for it. So he understands that. So he doesn't publish it because he's got no evidence for that. That is just his personal belief. And so he understands that you can't bring your personal beliefs into science. He said that before, right? You can't, you have to go with naturalistic evidence around you. And he understands that. He understands the limitations of science. It's just, as soon as somebody like sort of says that, right, they will go on to say, so, evolution is false and stuff. It's like, no. Francis Collins isn't advocating for bringing religion into science at all. At all.
Yeah, there's a lot of sciencey type people who also are theisty type people, and they consider them areas of non-overlapping magisteria. Like, one person who comes to mind, because she comes up all the time, is Mary Schweitzer. She's a Christian, but she understands that, the religion doesn't belong in the science, and the science doesn't belong in the religion. They're separate things.
Yep.
Recommend his book there, The Language of God, A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief. He is a geneticist and was part of the leadership group who mapped out the human genome, and was highly praised and awarded by our president, Barack Obama. Well, many atheists, including Christopher Hitchens, agree that this fine-tuning argument is...
yes, the king of the atheists.
All hail the Hitch.
That's right.
Can we promote him to godhood now that he's dead?
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I would like to.
You know what? Let's do. I haven't done a poll in the chat in a while. That's a tool that I have, because I have tools. Let's see. Question.
I like doing polls. I really do.
Hitch be deified? Let's see. Yes. No. I can't spell. It's fine. It's fine. We'll just go with it. Okay, so that while that poll's running, let's see what Hitch had to say.
For God. Premise one is based on empirical observation. We've just never seen design come from any other source except from an intelligent mind. And so when we see elements of design in the universe, I think it's reasonable to conclude that it came from some sort of intelligent mind analogous to ours. So
hold on, that's another big non sequitur.
That's, absolutely. Analogous to ours? Where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
And if fine-tuning is like, so here he's saying that fine-tuning is design, right? Like that's designed. So anything that is fine-tuned must be designed. He's kind of defining it into existence. He's sort of saying any case where something seems fine-tuned is automatically designed. And I completely disagree with that. We can explain why animals seem fine-tuned for their environment. It's got nothing to do with an intelligent mind.
For sure. And it works. Shit, how does it go? Yes, a thing is complex, therefore it must be designed. by something even more
Mhm.
complex. Well,
Yep.
now you've set up another infinite regress. That
Yes.
it's your like if your complex
Mm.
designer is even more complex than what designed
Right.
it and what designed it. And and that's when they start getting out the really fallacious philosophical nonsense. Oh, well, it's just a necessary being. That's all. It just
Oh.
always has been.
I love the creature versus creator distinction. You know, one has special rules that are very special, and I plead for them.
That's
You
right.
know, like terrible. And I do notice this quote that they've gotten off Hitch is it's got a lot of ellipses in it. Just going to say that a lot of the dots that they might have cut stuff out there. I'm not 100% sure, but do keep that in mind.
Yeah. See, now we're used to reading ellipses in like a dialogue sense to indicate a pause. Some of us from acting, some of us from reading dialogue in books, whatever the case may be. You don't need to put a pause in a written quote. When you see those in a quote, it's because words have been chopped out. And finding out that missing bit can often be kind of important. There's a reason they cut those.
But from this argument, many have concluded that this first cause is also intelligent. Now, lastly, the third argument then is the one that I specialize in, the moral argument for God. Here's just a basic version. Premise 1, there are objective moral truths independent of our minds. Premise 2, the existence of God is the best explanation for how there could.
I don't think that's true. I don't think there's objective moral truths. Like he's talking about moral facts, things that are just moral in the universe, and I don't think that's true. I mean, he could say, hey, everybody agrees on this. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just because every human agrees on something doesn't make it objective. Everybody could agree that ice cream is nice, but that doesn't make it objective. It just doesn't.
Yep, that was my objection too. Is like you can't just declare it's objective. Like there is no subjectively objective. You say it's objective subjectively, and I subjectively say that it's not objective. So where are we? If only there were some way to determine what the actual case was. You know, like investigating the matter to find out that no two humans completely agree on what is moral ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe we're channeling the objective moral transcendent reality imperfectly. We haven't evolved quite enough to get it just right yet, but
I think that if there were objective moral facts, that we should at least have a large overlap between what people consider moral, and we don't. We just seem to have a base foundation of what's moral on generally what is good for our people, our inner circle, and then screw the rest kind of thing. Like there's no agreement on these moral facts. So
I mean, I've always said the moral argument is kind of crappy, but this is a really bad formulation of it. Like he starts out with something that is an obviously and demonstrably false premise. It's a presupposition, but it's also false. And then the second one, the existence of God best explained. He's just picking his preferred conclusion with no reason for it and no support. So, I mean, the whole thing is circular. He's saying, I think God exists. Therefore, here's a bunch of unrelated stuff. God exists. Ta-da! Wowzers.
Be objective moral truths. Therefore, God exists. A contemporary proponent of this argument is Robert Adams. He's been a philosophy professor at Oxford and Yale, Rutgers, and I believe at University of California. Like Plato, Adams argues that God is the best explanation of objective morality in the sense that God provides the ultimate moral standard.
I'm not familiar with that argument from Plato, so I'll let that one slide. But again, we're saying, hey, a guy said the thing I'm saying, therefore I'm right.
Yeah.
a moral yardstick, if you will, such that other things are good, and we can measure the goodness of other things by comparing them to God, and if they resemble him in a morally pertinent sense, then they are good.
Just on
For
number
premise
2,
one, just walk with me.
It has been argued for objective moral facts from, or moral truths, as he says, from natural causes like evolution and the natural way that we interact with the world. I personally don't think it rises to the level of morality or a code of conduct, but people like Dr. Graham Oppy have argued for that. So I don't know why God is the best, best explains it rather than just naturalism. Like, I don't know why God is the best explanation. He hasn't said why it is, because we don't observe a God, but we do observe the natural world around us. So at least it's got that in its favor, so I don't know how a God best explain, the leaps he is taking here are just unreal in my opinion.
But Mark, have you ever considered looking at the trees?
I have looked at the trees. They're quite pretty. They're quite
They are.
pretty. Yeah.
Through this argument with my last couple minutes.
The trees seem fine-tuned for their environment, and they're not intelligent. I know. I've talked to them.
Mark is the Lorax. He speaks with the trees.
I am. Well, the Lorax speaks for the trees. I don't speak for anyone but myself, quite frankly. I wouldn't do that to a tree. So yeah, it's Lorax.
Here for premise one, consider 2 statements. So consider these 2 statements. The first statement is green is my favorite color. The second statement is 2 + 2 = 4. Now, if we all took some pills today, some mad scientist put something in our drinking water, or he gave us pills so that we woke up tomorrow believing that blue was our favorite color. All of us thought that blue was our favorite color. And we also all thought that 2 + 2 = 5. Somehow he gave us those pills to think that, and we woke up tomorrow thinking that. Now, consider with me tomorrow, would my belief that blue is my favorite color be true? I think it would, because a belief like that is dependent on my mind. Green used to be my favorite color, but now tomorrow it's blue because of the mad scientist and the pill he had me take. That's a belief that's dependent on my mind. But what about the belief 2 + 2 = 5? He gave me a pill to think that tomorrow, but is that true? If all of us tomorrow believe that 2 + 2 = 5, would that make it true? And I think the answer is no. And the reason is because 2 + 2 = 4 is an objective truth, a mathematical truth that exists in a sense beyond our minds. Similarly, ask yourself a question.
There's an old engineering joke that 2 + 2 = 5 for sufficiently large values of 2.
Yes.
It just always amuses me.
Yeah, this is and maths isn't objective either. It's a language that describes things. This is the problem. They think that the math is something real, but it's not objective. Like, we can do maths without 2 whatsoever. All you need is a 0 and a 1. And we've proved that damn conclusively because we have computers, right? It's no problem whatsoever. So when you say sort of, this is sort of saying, hey, there's something objective there. Yeah, it's sort of a pseudo concrete, but at the same time, there's no reason to think it's transcendent to, like, I don't know where he's going with this. He's trying to say that math is objective, and that's not true.
Right. It's like saying the English language is objective because I can, take his mad scientist pill and believe that what I call blue actually is green for everyone else. And for some people, that's true. Blue-green color blindness is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean the words blue and green are
Right.
objectively true. That's just how we describe
Right.
it. Same thing with math. What we call 5 is what we call 5. It doesn't affect the nature of the concept,
Right.
It's
reification is what it
yes.
is. It's mistaking the map for the place. Good night, Patty. Take
Good night,
care.
Patty. Glad you came. So yeah, there's a lot of buried, hidden premises, a lot of jumps in conclusioning. I'm very much not impressed so far. But what really
Yeah, no, I'm
bugs
not
me
impressed.
about the presentation thus far is the reliance on name dropping. There's so little argument and so much. Well, this guy said the thing, you know? Oh well, we'll see.
Question about this third statement. This third statement. It's wrong to abuse women. That statement, it's wrong to abuse women. Is that more like my favorite color is green? Or is that more like 2 + 2 = 4? In other words, if somebody gave me a pill, all of us a pill, and we woke up tomorrow morning, all of us thinking, because of that mad scientist, that it was morally okay to abuse women, would that make it morally okay to abuse women? And I would say no. I think we would agree. That seems to be more like...
Wait. So he's basically saying because we all agree on something, then it's got to be objective, and that's not true. The question is it wrong to abuse women? Is that independent of any stance that I take? Is there something in reality that makes that wrong, independent of my stance on it? Right, that it is wrong to abuse women. Now, some people might argue, hey, it is because there's an intrinsic morality about naturalism, that if you want to survive evolution, you can't abuse women, kind of thing. And I disagree. I think that morals are just made up by humans. I think that we take stances on them. So what is it that's objective that stops me from thinking that is right? My stance is that it's wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong. I think it's horrendous. But you can't appeal to emotion and go, well, because you find it absolutely horrible and malignant, it's got to be objective. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly not objective. I mean, there are people. First of all, you got to say what you mean by abuse, right? Because there are things that many cultures do that we might consider abuse, and they say that's perfectly fine to do to women.
Yes.
Our holy book says so, you know?
Right.
So, you know, what do you, a little Jordan Peterson, what do you mean by...
Yeah. But the whole thing is that not everyone would agree with that. There would be people in Muslim countries that are like, no, doing female circumcision is perfectly fine. Hell, like you might say it's wrong to abuse men, but you will still circumcise your kids, which I consider abuse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like this whole thing is saying, hey, because we all agree in the room, then it must be objective. No, absolutely not. Just because we have a moral position on something doesn't make morality objective. You've got to show that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that people don't agree on a thing doesn't mean it's not objective. You could have a cult of people, you know, Terrence Howard, for example, 1 × 1 = 2.
Yeah.
But you can still demonstrate a thing exists outside of the thing. I'm low-key using the book that Robin Webster graciously sent me. I know I still haven't put my tabs in it. I'm a bad atheist. I'm bad at this. But I'm trying to see what it was that Saves the Day called me. So I'm looking at Proverbs 26:11. Let's see. As a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly.
Beautiful, poetic.
It is.
It is. Poetic.
Oh, goodness.
The mathematical truth that it's objectively wrong. It's a truth independent of our minds and what we think. That it's objectively true that women should not be abused.
Most of you know my story.
Oh, yep. I put in a little gap as I edited out the long introductions and this and that.
Yep.
Yeah, the usual. So yeah, that was the opening. And, you know, I mean, I agree with the conclusion. People generally shouldn't be abused, you know, be kind. But the rest of it is junk. I'm not impressed so far. All right, so yeah, I'll just let Dan go from here, and I won't try to like back him up the half a second.
I was a preacher, a true believing preacher. I believed in God. I preached for 19 years, and I changed my mind. I like to say I didn't throw out the bathwater. I threw the bathwater out. I found out there's no baby in the bathwater. So I was one of those kind of preachers that you would not have wanted to sit next to on a bus, because I was so sure Jesus was coming soon. The Bible is reliable. God is real. I got the goosebumps. I got the feelings. But more than that, I had what I thought was the rock truth of the reliability of scriptures. I did change my mind. You can see, if you want to know more of my story, you can read it in my book, Godless, in the back. So from my point of view,
Buy my DVDs.
Buy my DVDs.
I mean, I have to be fair. The first guy did it. Dan's doing it. I mean, everybody's got to sell their stuff. You got to get your hustle. But I'm still gonna
no, I got you. Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, when I was doing that debate against what they called a debate, that Christian room, the guy Joel said something interesting, which I kind of agree with. He's like, oh, someone called him a shill, and he's like, well, a shill doesn't believe what they're saying. And I kind of think that is true, that for someone to be a shill, they are selling something without actually believing in the veracity of it. They know it's snake oil, basically. So I think we've got to reserve that word for people that we're pretty damn sure they don't believe what it is that they're saying, kind of thing.
Does that mean we have to revoke Dr. Tapioca Weasel's NASA shillness, since he actually believes NASA, or seems to?
He doesn't believe NASA. He doesn't. Nobody believes NASA. They're all shills. Fair. Every single one. It's shills all the way down.
That's
all
right.
the way down.
That's
right.
Yeah. Speaking of Dr. Tap, who is an option on our poll, let's see how the poll is doing with 17 votes. We have should Hitch be deified? The nobody got a majority because I included a third option because I am a bad atheist.
Oh no!
But the top result was Tapioca Weasel, 47%. I'm sure Tap will be devastated he didn't win a clear majority, but that's what he gets. I mean, he doesn't show up here very often anymore.
No.
And so, people
it might just be times. I must admit, I try to show up all over the place, and it's just times that get me,
I get that. I can only, I mean, I'm bouncing from stream to stream because there's so many things. But out of the yes or no options, no was the winner by almost 4-1, 41% to 11%. So Hitch, we're just gonna let Hitch just be in the past.
I figure that he would actually want it that way, to be honest with you.
That's probably true. But yeah, I mean, hey, now we've got an answer. And because it is the preferred answer, it is now the objective truth.
Okay.
This debate's easy because the atheist has nothing to prove. Atheism is simply the absence of theism. So I don't have to get up here and a whole bunch of talking points to prove that there is no God. Annie, Lorraine and I, the first time we visited Iceland, it was really a beautiful country. We took a tour of the country, just gorgeous scenery. We were driving along this highway. They call it a highway, it's a road. And there was a place where the road was going straight, and then it veered like this, kind of around and made it like a semicircle, and then went straight again, like it was avoiding something. The driver told us it was in fact avoiding something. It was avoiding elves. There are people in Iceland who still believe in elves, and the government accommodated this belief by diverting the highway so that it wouldn't disturb where some people thought these elves actually lived in the history.
So that's actually, I can provide some confirmation. I've never been to Iceland, but I've heard a very similar story from a photography friend named Chris Marquardt, who goes on photo expeditions all over the world. And he says Iceland is trippy because they have like actual fairy areas that people stay away from, so the fairies don't get you.
And I remember you could get a certificate of elf spotting. I think that was on a John Oliver thing. Like you could actually get a certificate, like a degree in elf spotting. Of course, it wasn't a real degree. It was just a piece of paper, much like Kent Hovind's doctorates. But yeah, I mean, you can get this thing saying that you're an elf spotter.
Hell yeah! Which clearly proof of elves. It's an objective truth.
Yeah. You can get an accredited degree in almost, an unaccredited degree in almost anything. That's the ridiculousness of Hovind. He thinks his degree's legitimate, but they're just as legitimate as the fairy spotting degree.
Yep, we love to see it. So yeah, more on elves. There are cookies. Elves make cookies. There are cookies, therefore elves.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe
I stole that from Chris Mallard too.
Yeah.
Chris puts on a fun show, 9 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. I mean, his channel's bigger than mine, so I don't really need to promote him, but it's entertaining. If you haven't seen it.
I like it.
Yeah.
And it's my nighttime, so I get to relax and chill out there.
Hell yeah.
When I can make it. Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's cute. This is local culture. This is, it's a free country. People can believe what they want. If someone wants to believe in elves, fine. But what if one of the elf people, what would you call an elf believer? An elvist, a theist, elvist. What if one of them says, but it's true, Dan, you have to believe in the elves. And I would say, well, that's fine for you. You can believe that. I mean, but I have good reason for believing in these elves. I really do. And I said, well, that's okay. I'm fine. You can have your belief. That's fine with me. But you need to believe it because the ancient elf thousands of years ago was killed and then he came back to life. And if you don't believe in him, you're going to be punished. And then I'm thinking, well, that is maybe not so cute anymore, but that's your belief, right? So give me some reason why. Why are there really elves there with highway bands? Give me some reasons. And what if the Elvis were to turn to me and say, no, you have to prove that there are no elves? Is that the way to argue? Who has the burden of proof? The burden of proof beyond any reasonable doubt, and even Adam admits there's reasonable doubt because he's met many of the philosophers of religion who have reasonable doubt about the existence of the great elf, the great theist. And so all I have to do today is demonstrate that he, as sincere as he is and as smart as he is, has failed to make a case beyond a reasonable doubt.
I tend to agree. I mean, he's barely made a case at all. It's generous to call it a case, honestly. Oh well. Oh yeah. Titania.
Yeah, I love fairy lore.
Puck.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so fun. But there are books about this. There's a Shakespearean play, which means that it must be true. But if you really want a cool book, one of my favorites is called Fairy Tale, not the new one. It's an older one from like the late 70s, early 80s by Raymond E. Feist.
Yes, I've read it.
It's so good. It gets. I mean, I don't know if he's. I don't know where the hell he's from, but he gets deep into the lore, and it's so cool.
Atheists will say in general that not that God has been disproved, but that God is unproved, and that we are open to changing our mind. I would love to know if there's really elves. I would love to know if there's really a God. That would be an amazing thing to know. So bring it on. Let's hear what you have here. Atheism is simply the absence of theism, although there's a subset of what you might call hard atheists who say they believe or know there's no God. Most of us atheists and agnostics simply lack a belief, and I think it's based on generally 6 lacks or 6 absences. The first one is the absence of a coherent definition of a God. You heard earlier that God is somehow defined as what did he call him? A timeless, immaterial, spaceless being. What the
timeless, spaceless. Oh, I need that clip. It's so
What does that mean? What's the coherency between? We know what a being is. A being is an agency that occupies space and time. A being can be measured and can be weighed. We know what beings are. How can you take that word being and then apply it to something that's non-being? To be means to exist in space and time, and yet they're defining this creature as a spaceless, timeless space-time thing. That's not coherent.
That's true. I mean, to exist means you have a location within space and time. To say it's outside of time and space, that it's timeless and spaceless, is to say it does not exist. So, I mean, you conceded the argument. Good job, I guess.
To be fair, that only applies if you subscribe to naturalism or materialism, like one of the two. Like it doesn't. Like so they describe sort of something existing as in it doesn't have to be physical. I would disagree, and his own thing says, hey, we've never seen him fine tuning come from a non-mind, which we have. But at the same time, if you're going to use those kind of arguments, we've never seen anything that's non-physical, that's sort of immaterial or transcendent, as you say it. Like, so show us that.
Right. Show me 2 + 2 = 5. Not that two
Yeah.
things plus two things put together make 4, but like show
Right.
me the concept of 4. You know?
Yeah, it doesn't work. So, but there's sort of a school called idealists, and they think that, and sort of to a lesser degree, these Neoplatonics kind of thing, that
Ugh.
these abstract concepts have some kind of existence. They occupy some other plane, and it gets ridiculous. Because if that's true and concepts it means that I can think up something absolutely ridiculous, and that has to exist, which is like, if thoughts exist, if concepts exist, then everything exists, because we've thought of damn near everything, including paradoxes. It doesn't work. It's absurd. So they would probably disagree with your definition of exist, but I agree. I think that in order to exist, you have got to at least have some presence in this universe, like some presence.
What if God is the concept of the ultimate absurdity? Because there must be an ultimate absurdity.
Right.
And it must actually exist.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
The universe is a joke.
But the only way it could be
That's
more
valid
absurd is if it didn't exist and a whole bunch of people thought it did. That would be the ultimate absurdity.
Oh no. Oh my.
Oh, shots fired. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Quick side tangent, because Left-Handed Jedi is objectively correct that Raymond E. Feist's Magician is
It's really good.
amazing.
Yeah.
The whole series is. I describe a phenomenon of a thing being intellectually stimulating on various levels simultaneously as having brain tinglies. The whole series gives me brain tinglies. It's fucking cool.
I didn't like Silverthorn or Darkness at Sethanon as much, but they were still good. I just didn't like them as much as Magician. I thought Magician was absolutely fantastic. I actually liked the one he did with Janie Wirtz better, actually.
Oh, yeah,
which was the Daughter of the Empire was the first book. It was really good. Just the whole system was fantastic. Incidentally, even though they collaborated on that, Janie Wirtz by herself is terrible. Like, I've read one of her books and she takes so long doing descriptions that it's just nightmarish. I disliked her intensely, but together, Raymond E. Feist is really good at actions and people doing things, and Janie Wirtz is really good at descriptions. And so they kind of balanced out to make these amazing books. But you've got to read Magician before you read them, or you don't know what's going on, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the Rift War.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, that was where I first gained the idea. So many things, but the concept of interdimensional travel, because we don't know if the other world is even in the same universe. Probably it is, and they're basically just have a wormhole, but it's whatever. But it also goes to like my concept of being able to read. Like, I was reading at a very young age. And because I was reading college textbooks before I started kindergarten. And so my parents told my grandparents I'm a very good reader. So they sent me a copy of the first part Magician Apprentice. And I mean, I could read the words, I could understand the contents, but I just wasn't really interested in the story. It started off too slow for me. So I set the book aside. And then a year later, I picked it up again, and I got a little further. I got a few pages in, but it was still just too slow for me. So I set the book aside, and a year later, I picked it up, and oh, this is a cool story now. I'm like, aha, the brain levels up as we go. So just because you don't like a story today doesn't mean you won't always.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a double tangent. I'll give you. Back on point.
There are a lot of other reasons why the definitions of different gods, and there's many different definitions, fall flat, and we can't even debate their existence because we don't even know what we're talking about. It would be like arguing for the existence of a married bachelor. Should we have a debate for a married bachelor? No, you don't even get off the ground. We don't even know what we're talking about. There are many mutually incompatible properties in these definitions of these gods that have been proposed to us, and some of them cancel each other out, especially the omni gods. A lot of these omnis cancel each other out. The Christian God traditionally is defined as a being who is a personal being, who is omniscient, who is omnipotent and omnibenevolent. Let me get some water here. And
while he is doing that, Filbert, I see your recommendation. As it happens, I have an Audible credit available, so I'm looking up the first book now. I just thought I'd throw that out there because I'm always down.
That sounds familiar. I think I've seen. Maybe I'm thinking of the film Deathstalker, which was hilarious. It was such a bad film.
Simon Green. Okay,
Maybe I'm
Deathstalker
thinking
series
about
book. Ooh, 22 hours. I do love me a good. Well, that's a mid-size read for me. I like to do the really long shit, like Stephen King's 11/22/63. It's like 50 some hours. I have a lot of time to listen to books.
Yeah, my favorite's got to be the Mistborn books. I really loved them. I thought they were amazing. Brandon Sanderson is fantastic.
I've heard that name before.
Yeah, he's been involved with a lot of different stuff. Actually, he completed the Wheel of Time series.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and Robert Jordan stayed true to his promise. He would keep writing those books until they nailed shut his coffin. That's
but and he sure did.
But it's so great that they found somebody to finish it, because I mean, so often we have these long series that people have decades of time invested into, and they want to know how it ends.
George R. R. Martin, I'm looking at you. I think, to be honest with you, the only reason why the Game of Thrones series isn't my favorite books is because he didn't finish them. That's the only. Those are amazing books. I'm not going to take that away from Martin. He is an amazing author, and those books were so good, but they didn't freaking end. He didn't complete it. It just hangs and
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I mean, I had back when physical bookstores were a thing, I was looking for a new book, and I was like, you know what? I'll just ask the person who works here, because they probably read the books. And I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a new fantasy book. And then they're like, oh, have you heard of George R. R. Martin? And I'm like, oh no, what is this? And oh, Game of Thrones. And I'm like, oh, that sounds vaguely chess-like. Tell me more. And so she hands me the book. And like, you know, I was intrigued, you know, I believe the very opening scene is where the children find the direwolves. And I'm like, oh, this is nifty. Yeah. This has possibilities. So I start reading, and, you know, spoiler alert on a book that's more than 20 years old and has already been made into an HBO show. But the guy who is the obvious hero character dies immediately. And I'm like, oh, this is different. This is very different.
Yeah.
Where are we going
as well? Where, you know, the guy's running from, you know, you get these people that are running from something, these things that they've seen up north in the frost, and it hints that they're part of something where they're not allowed to abandon their post because, you know, spoiler alert, they're part of the watch, the watchers on the wall.
Night Watch.
The Night Watch, convicted criminals that have been put to watch for the stuff out there. Nobody, like, just the way it sets it up, that they're running from something that scares them more than the penalty for death. And the obvious main character sort of says, you know, he says stuff like, well, if you're going to dish out capital punishment, you have to do it yourself, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, you can't offload it to somebody else. It has to be something you do. It's just so fascinating. Like, who are these people? Why are they running? What's this wall? What's all of this? Just so intriguing. You know, just that I think that is one of the opening scenes. Like, they kill these deserters and then they find the direwolves. That's the opening of the books, and just the amount of possibility in the world just from those two events is incredible, right? Oh, thanks, Sydney. Thanks. This wasn't my tangent. Thank you very much.
It's true, but Mark does have a totally different tangent emoji. Yeah, it's
Look, if you're a betting person, I totally get it. You know, like if you're a betting person, it's good to bet on me starting the tangent. But this one wasn't me, okay? Well, it might have been me. It actually might have been me.
it may have been.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's we're all just here. Okay, so I have
Yeah.
I'm having to fight my Audible app because it wouldn't let me use a credit on the Mistborn thing. But I have the first book of each. I have Deathstalker and Final Empire. The Final Empire is the first book in Mistborn, and it'll take me a minute. I still have to finish the shit that I've already got.
Oh, you'll like Mistborn.
I'll get to it.
guarantee
I will get to it.
It's fantastic. I haven't read Deathstalker. I'm gonna put that down. Well, I remember that because of the crappy film, but who was it? Mighty Philbert says that it's totally different. I would hope so. Like, that was a terrible film, like terrible, but yeah, no problem.
I'm tempted to go into other terrible things, but you know, we've tangented enough. Let's get back to Dan.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
those characteristics cannot
long-
exist logically.
People come here for the tangents, you know.
Well, that's true. That's true.
It's like a married bachelor. My favorite one is what I call FANG. The free will argument for the non-existence of God. If God is a person who has free will, regardless of what you think about humans, we're all debating about whether humans have free will or not. Atheists disagree. Theologians disagree. Philosophers and scientists disagree about whether we humans have free will, and we can have that debate some other time. But certainly most theists believe that God himself does have free will. He's a personal being who can make choices. But in order to have free will, you have to have options. You have to have a period of uncertainty where it's not strawberry or vanilla yet, or chocolate yet. I'm still going to decide. You have to have a period of uncertainty during which you can make your decision. But if God knows the future, including his own future, he has no period of uncertainty. There is no phase in there where he's able to exercise a decision because he knows what he is going to do in the future. So if you know the future, you cannot have free will. That doesn't mean there's not some other kind of God that can be modeled by tinkering with definitions, and theologians have tried different ways of doing that. And of course, many of these definitions are not falsifiable. What is it that would actually prove your God hypothesis to be false? We rarely hear anyone give an example of a statement which, if true, would make that original hypothesis false.
Yep.
The second lack is I think it's the biggest one, the lack of evidence.
And sort of Carl Sagan and to an extent Karl Popper, they really had it pinned down on unfalsifiable propositions. Like, they're not even worth considering if you can't falsify them. They're kind of, you know, if somebody says, hey, there's a teapot around town, if we can't check, then it's sort of a meaningless statement. We can't do anything about it. So it's not the ability to argue for these things. It's the ability to overcome a set of criteria that would falsify it that actually shows that it's true. And that's what science does. It tries to falsify things.
Yeah. I mean, the point is to discover when we're wrong so we can, you know, learn more. I mean, you know, we in another stream earlier today, I think it may have been Live from the Hive, Breeze show, which is Saturday morning. Well, my Saturday mornings. There's a theist who loiters around the community named Blessed Be He. And she, you know, she was posing the idea that science is just a doctrine you're not allowed to question. I'm like,
that's all it does.
I'm like, that's where the new science comes from. You're supposed to challenge the science. That's how we make more science. My goodness.
The Elvis might say, well, yeah, I have evidence. There's stories about elves. There's songs about elves. There's books and there's sagas about elves. Have you ever eaten a box of Lucky Charms? There's a leprechaun on the front. There's pictures of elves. And I would say, well, okay, that's evidence, but is that good evidence? I mean, really, would anyone think that was good evidence? It's more evidence of culture and myth making, more evidence of human wishful thinking to explain the world. But think about this. If there really was evidence, good evidence for a God, by now, someone should have won the Nobel Prize for pointing that out. Any scientist in the world would jump at that, wouldn't they? If there was solid evidence of the existence of a hitherto unknown force in the cosmos, then someone should have done that, and they haven't yet. So that's an absence. I'm not saying this disproves God, but it's a lack. It's an absence of God. In fact, Exhibit 1 in this plank is this debate right now. If God exists, why are we arguing for him?
That's one of my favorite arguments. It's like,
Yeah.
why? Why does God, an omnipotent being, need apologists? Why can't he just like, boop, here I am, just pull the old ta-da, bitches.
And for an omniscient God would know that more is required for people to believe in them. An omnipotent God would be able to do it as a triviality. It would be nothing to them, absolutely nothing. So all of these wars fought over who has the right God, God could have avoided that completely, easily. And because he's omniscient, God would know that humans would fight over which God is correct or who has the correct God, and knows that they will continue to do so far into the future. And he could prevent it all so easily and doesn't.
Yeah.
Why?
The only theodicy that I've ever found with any validity is that the uncertainty, the disagreement, and the resulting wars and harm and suffering and whatnot are necessary for some unknowable reason.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a specific goal, and taking these detours of suffering through history are the only way to get there. But that undermines omnipotence. If you're omnipotent, you can get to your goal however the fuck you please. But details.
God exists, why are we debating for his existence? Why are we falling back on words and abductive reasoning to try to get to the... If there's a God, he seems pretty puny, doesn't he? That he needs philosophers to come up with arguments.
The apologists do love to make their super being God awfully damn weak. It happens a lot.
Yeah, and this is the best God can come up with. That's the more alarming thing. That, hey, God works in mysterious ways. Look at the trees. There's got to be a prime mover. Instead of actual, reliable, solid evidence, the best he can come up for is these lame-ass arguments for some general God. It's nonsense. It's really nonsense. That I could come up with better arguments than these people.
Yeah, I mean, I have, people are like, oh, well, why is the universe the way it is? If I gonna put on my theist hat, my where is it? My Pope of Atheism hat, which is buried under other hats because of course it is. But I just pop this little bad boy on. I know I'm like gonna make some strudel or something. Okay, so why is the universe the way it is if we have a super God? Okay, well, I mean, God, he's all knowing, but he can only know that which can be known, that which is logically possible, right? So before there's a universe, there's no universe. So how does he know how to create a universe, how to, make it do the things it needs to do? Well, being an all wise, all knowing, all whatever being, he comes up with the perfect solution. I will create a self-organizing universe where emergent properties build upon each other to eventually make wonders that I myself could not at this time imagine. And so, Big Bang, and then matter starts to condense out of the energy fields, and then the matter starts to clump, and holy shit, there's stars. This is cool. And then the stars blow up, and now there's all kinds of new matter, and some of it forms planets, and some of those planets start to develop amino acids, and then eventually you get cells, and then eventually, holy shit, the chemicals, they're doing shit on their own. That one planet's atmosphere turned blue. Look at all this cool shit happening all by itself. The evolution is progressing, emergent property upon emergent property, until suddenly you have these weird, nearly hairless ape things that are speculating about the nature of reality and are splitting atoms and shit. This is the coolest thing ever. But then you lose the whole, he knows the end from the beginning, because that only works if he has no idea how to make a universe. So he just makes a self-organizing one. But it's still a fun idea.
Yeah.
From my perspective, anyway.
for his existence. I mean, this doesn't disprove the arguments, but it does kind of show that this being is kind of hiding himself. And if he really is going to all this trouble to hide himself, what business do you have to try to expose him? You know what I mean? He's doing a good job of hiding himself, and you're trying to bring, come on, God, come on out. So
like
this
that.
argument, this debate itself.
Kind of like the best argument for that, the divine hiddenness thing, is something that I heard from Leo Philius, our friend Leo Philius. And I don't know if he was the original of it, but that's where I heard it. That was like, well, if God wants us to know that he exists and he is omnipotent and omniscient, he either doesn't want us to know that he exists, or he is incapable of letting us know that he exists, because that should not be a problem for an omnipotent God. So we can say that God doesn't exist because either it is in conflict with him wanting to know he exists, and that he has the power to know that he exists. One of those is not true. Now, you might want to say, oh, but he only wants those who believe. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean then he doesn't want me to know that he exists, because he could easily do so. Paul got a Damascus Road experience, and for some reason, God could never pull that off again. Who knew? Right?
Ran out of miracle juice.
Yeah, the idea that God wants everyone to exist, or God has the power to appear to everybody, one of those things is not true. Can't be.
I mean, have you considered the last time God showed his face, humans fucking killed him?
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, they still carry around instruments of torture to commemorate his death.
That is a bit
if it
weird,
were me, I wouldn't want to hang out with the humans either.
Yeah, but the whole point is that God wanted to be killed, according to them. Like, do you think that in their worldview, the omnipotent God could actually be killed by humans without desiring that to happen?
I always thought that was one of the big flaws with the crucifixion story, is like, whether Jesus is God or is the adopted son of God, or whatever the case may be, if God wants to show his power like he did in the Old Testament days, why didn't he levitate Jesus off the cross and then light that bitch on fire? It just show the power. He had no qualms about it back in the day,
Maybe even back then, burning crosses wasn't socially acceptable.
It could offend the Romans. It's true. We wouldn't want to break a law, Holy shit.
As an argument.
Holy shit.
For the lack of evidence. There's also a lack of good argument. And during my rebuttal, I'll talk about the three major planks that Adam brought up. The design argument is kind of like the guy who's so surprised. How did they get all those rivers to flow right along the state borders? How did they do that? Look at that. That must have been a massive feat of engineering and public expense to do that. That's proof of something, right? How did they do? Or like Julia Sweeney says in her movie, Letting Go of God, look at the human nose. Look at how perfectly built it is to support a pair of glasses. Look at that. How do you explain that unless there's some intelligent design here? Well, there needs to be a word for this. It's not really a fallacy, but it's like when your premise is backwards. When you think that the rivers, the state borders came first and the rivers came later. It's like Vic Stenger, who he wrote the book, The Fallacy of Fine Tuning. He's an astrophysicist. He just died recently. Vic Stenger said the universe is not fine tuned for us. We are fine tuned for the universe. And yet there's a fallacy that happens in the making of your premise that somehow this design is evidence when it's a backwards kind of inside-out thinking. I think we need a new word. We have deductive logic, which is pretty powerful for formulating hypotheses that are solid conclusions. We have inductive logic, which is pretty good. It's weaker for generating some premises. We have what Adam called abductive logic, which really is just a fancy word for your best guess. And that's okay. When you're trying to solve a crime, you're looking for a prime suspect. Actually, prime suspects are people who do exist, right? But I think we need another kind of a word called maybe post-deductive logic, where it's kind of like the post hoc fallacy. The rooster crows every morning and the sun comes up. Wow, powerful rooster, right? Wow. Of course, we all see the illogical.
The roosters do cause the sunrise. It's true. If you chant enough, the sun will come up.
And I mean, I have to bring it up. We've talked about it all the time, but the puddle analogy from Douglas Adams that says the puddle sort of goes, oh, I was perfectly made for this hole kind of thing, where that's not the case. We know that the puddle shapes to the hole, and the same is true of animals and plants and things. They evolve to the environment, not the environment evolving to them. It just looks fine-tuned, that the environment looks fine-tuned to us, because the animals and plants and everything fits in it so well. It's not actually the case.
Yeah, and the same is true for the fine-tuning argument generally. Most of the universe is not very well suited to us. If things were different, then things would be different. If you alter the force of gravity by 1 part in 10 to the 70,000th or whatever the fuck they say, then we'd have a different gravity. Okay, great, cool, whatever. Whatever evolves in that universe would evolve in that universe. Now, what would show supernatural power is if we were in a universe where we could not evolve. We had to be poofed into being. That would demonstrate some magic. And you know what else is magic? People who support this channel. Yes.
Absolutely.
Mighty Filbert sends a $10 super chat. Thank you so much. And says, first, thanks for the membership. I really love your channel. Well, thank you. I'm so glad you're enjoying yourself. That's why we do it. I'm glad it's working. I read Barker's books, Godless, shortly after I resigned from the ministry and lost my faith. It really helped me. Much respect for him. That's really good to hear. I'm a minister myself. I was never a Christian per se, despite much social pressure and my grandmother's urging and so on and so forth. But it's really, really difficult to some parts of certain religions are a lot easier to let go of than others. But that concept of there's something more, and finally letting go of both the fear and the possibility, when you just accept that there just isn't. But there is, on the plus side, so much more wonder and vibrancy and vitality and cool shit to learn about in real reality that just gets blocked by that curtain of faith. When you just look at the world as just backdrop and go, God did it, you're missing all the magnificent stuff from, the operation of a photon, which is so intricate. It's, we see it in elementary school depicted as just a sine wave, but it's actually 2 sine waves on perpendicular planes. But it's actually not that either, because that's just measuring an electrical field and a magnetic field, and that's the readings we get on those charts. In reality, it's actually more like a thing orbiting a central point, but it's more than that, because when you factor in there's a bunch of other things. The electrical and the magnetic are offset by a quarter turn, and when you run the math for that, it's actually 2 semi-particles orbiting each other over a common central point. And we know from, as we previously discussed with the particle collider experiments, when you smash 2 photons of the right wavelength into each other, you get a electron and a positron. So it's actually 2 half particles, one of matter, one of antimatter, orbiting each other. There's so much more, and that's just 1 photon. Then on the other end of things, you've got, galaxies on the far end of the universe with time dilation that we would have never expected before general relativity. And it's so trippy. There's a supernova we're tracking from a far distant galaxy that happens to be behind a galaxy cluster. So we get the gravitational lensing effect, which means we're seeing that same supernova from 2 different perspectives because of the lensing. And we're able to do the math and figure out that a third bent perspective is going to appear sometime in the next few years. And when it appears, when that suddenly that supernova becomes visible, that'll help us nail down a certain exact value for the cosmological constant to a new level of certainty never before achieved. And that prediction is a direct result of human brains doing amazing fucking things. There's so much to this universe that we would have never seen if we just stayed locked behind that wall of faith.
Mm-hmm. And so I like to ask the question, sort of, what has religion told us about the world around it, or discovered about the world around us in the last, say, 2,000 years? What has it actually shown to be true about the world around us? So isn't it funny that you have these people who claim to have a source of absolute knowledge about everything, right? This absolute source of knowledge can't discover anything about the world, while the people doing science who are observing the world can actually have discovered everything about it that we know about it. So why do you think you have access to some ultimate knowledge? You don't know anything more than the next person along. And if the next person along is a physicist, they will know tons more than you do. So where does this claim come from?
Yeah, as I often ask, like, why, upcoming video, I think it's on Tuesday when it comes out. It's already available to members. I've alluded to it a couple of times. But one of the things in there is it's a Ray Comfort, which is a trip. But he alludes to how the Bible has foreknowledge and prophecy and whatnot because it commands people in the Old Testament to wash their hands under running water. And what science has learned since is that there's germs in the water, and so running water is better. I'm like, but why doesn't the Bible just tell us about germs? Or why doesn't it suggest boiling your water, which was a technology available to people at that time, because running water can have germs in it too? What the hell? There's so much. Why doesn't it tell us about DNA? Why doesn't it tell us about distant galaxies? Why does it? There's so many things. Yeah.
Penicillin. Like, if I was a god and writing stuff in a book, one of the first things I would write is penicillin. Like this mold and sort of this spore, like, you can put it to stop infection. Do you know the amount of people that have died in screaming agony because they just got infected and they didn't have any knowledge of this? Incredible amount. It would have saved so many lives, and yet they're putting in what the priest should wear in their book. Is that really important?
Yep. No mixed fabrics.
Yep.
And don't plant two different types of crops next to each other. You're gonna piss off the angry critter in the sky who loves the smell of burning flesh. It is an aroma pleasing unto the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking of Chris's goat candles. I need to license that commercial. That is so fucking funny.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, I think we should come up with our own and sort of he can play them. I would like to do that. I haven't had the energy at the moment, but I would like to do that. I do have an idea for one. So yeah.
Hell yeah. Good shit. So that's tangents on top of tangents. But thank you, Philbert. I appreciate the super chat. And that is an absolutely solid message with so many implications. And absolutely read Dan's book. There's a lot to say.
Logic of that. Well, Adam is making the same mistakes when he's talking about fine tuning. He's assuming a certain temporal causality here, even with the so-called formation of the Big Bang, admitting that space and time came into existence at the Big Bang, and yet saying something must have come prior. How can you describe prior to time? Time is a dimension. What is higher than height? What is broader than width? It's a dimension that we're talking about, and yet Adam seems to be talking about them as if they were things, as if time somehow could exist outside of time, which is not a coherent.
It's space-time. There's no just time by itself. It's space. Time and space are inextricably linked. You cannot get space-time is space-time. You can't unlink them. And mass has this distortion effect on space-time. It both creates gravity, which sort of puts a dent in the space. And that's a really bad word, I know. Please don't hassle me, Ember. I know you know way more than me. But it also dilates time. It also bends time. And that's because space-time is one thing, not two things. I hate it when they say, hey, there's space and then there's time. No, it's the entire, it's the same thing. It's the fabric of space-time.
Mm-hmm. And you could get even deeper on that, but I've tangented enough.
Okay, yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. And I probably won't understand. Look, you know way more than me about that. I will happily concede that. Absolutely. I love it when you talk about it, though, because I do learn a lot.
It's you know, we all have our specialties, and that's one of the reasons we have so much strength as a community, because we have not only diverse experiences, but diverse ways of thinking about things and interpretations. Like, you know, Dan will say something and I'll take one thing away from it. You'll take another thing and we can compare notes, and the people in chat have different takes as well, which is why we do live shows, because we love to hear from you folks. And it just makes us all smarter, as opposed to theism, where you've got one person with an unquestionable book, and he's going to tell you what it says and what the being described herein wants. No questions. Just do as you're told. I guess I did go on a tangent there, didn't I? I'm trying to avoid. I'm bad at this job, folks.
Concept. There's other problems with some of these arguments, and most of them fall into what we would call God of the gaps. We can't explain something, the appearance of fine-tuning. We can't explain that so well, then God seems to be, conveniently, the God that I was raised with seems to be the right answer to plug that gap. When we know through history that science has been plugging those gaps all along. What caused the thunder? They didn't know. It must have been some agency, some big being called Zeus or Thor or something up there. We don't know. Well, now we do know something about electricity and about the weather. That gap is closed. It was open for a while. People were free to plug it with their God. There are some gaps that exist in science right now. We admit it. There are many unanswered questions. Why is the cosmological constant so razor thin perfect in our universe right now? Why is it so close to zero? Could it have been some other number?
But it could be more perfect. That's the thing. Like physicists have said, like the constants of the universe could be better. It could be a stable universe that's not expanding. It could have expanded to a certain point, and then, you know, there's always these things of, oh well, why are they so good? Why aren't they better? Why is the Earth like the Goldilocks zone? Why are we on the outer fringes of the Goldilocks zone? We could be at a better point in it, like, but we're not. That's the whole thing. Like, if you want to argue that a perfect God designed this perfectly, why the imperfections? Why are we on the outer edge of the Goldilocks zone? Why are black holes being formed and, you know, randomly? Why are galaxies annihilated every single day? Why is all of this happening? It doesn't cover it. I think it was Stephen Hawking said that if the universe is designed for anything, fine-tuned for anything, it's fine-tuned for black holes, because that seems to be where all this ends up, in black holes. So, which is not conducive to our little 8 people survival at all.
Yeah, it's not a great plan, as you might say. But there's a lot of things having to do with it. Like, one of the big arguments that we'll often get in return is, well, if the cosmological constant was slightly different by 1 in 70,000, first of all, the cosmological constant isn't actually constant. That refers to the rate of expansion of the universe. We know that at different points in history, it has been different. We don't quite know why. We haven't pinned down the source of dark energy yet. We're working on it. But we do know from looking at the very, very most distant galaxies, it was going much faster at one point. And we know from the middle distance galaxies, it was a little bit weaker. Things weren't moving quite as fast. And we extrapolate from the observations and measurements we can make the period of inflation when the universe expanded faster than the speed of light. At one point, it was really fucking high. So it's not actually a constant. So what does that mean? What does that imply about the rest of the universe? We're not sure yet, but it isn't fine-tuned to a specific value, and only that value makes reality possible, because it clearly isn't the case.
And then, of course, another lack, the fourth lack, is the lack of agreement. Theists, people who believe in God, don't agree with each other about the nature of this God. They argue with each other. They don't agree with each other about moral principles. Adam mentioned morality, and yet you take any moral issue of the world right now that we're struggling with. What would it be? Gay marriage, or abortion rights, or the war, or gun control, or you could name another dozen issues that are very important. You find good, Bible-believing, church-going Christians on both sides of those issues, don't you? There's no moral guidance in the Bible, except some general, do good. But if the Bible's a moral guidance, and I know we're just talking about mere theism here, but still, we look at the theists themselves and we see if there's a God, why isn't there just one religion?
1 minute.
Why? Why shouldn't there be more? I mean, why should there be just one religion alone? And then, of course, the final absence is the lack of a need for a God. I'll come back to the problem of evil in a moment. Millions of good people, tens of millions of good people in this country, and hundreds of millions of good people in the world live happy, meaningful, productive, moral, purposeful lives without believing in a God. We march in the same march with believers as well. In the real world, we know how to live a moral life through the intention of avoiding harm in the real world. There are no objective moral values. That's an oxymoron, and I'll talk about that later during my rebuttal. So based on that, and then I'll throw in the problem of evil in a minute, it is justifiable. It's not proof, but it is justifiable not to hold a belief in a God.
Yay! So this is a slightly weird debate. They took a brief pause to talk about the Q&A later on and so on. And then Dan gets up for his rebuttal. So they've reversed order for the rebuttal phase. It's weird, but here we are.
Well, it's sometimes they do it like that because the first argument, you would expect that to be the first to be rebutted against. Right. So that's actually a more formalized debate structure, because somebody did an introduction first. You would expect that has the rebuttal first, and then the rebuttal is made for the other side. So it's sort of giving people, Dan gets the last word on the introductions, and then, the Andrew Lloyd Webber gets the rebuttal on the other side kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're in good shape, and then we're going to hear some problem of evil probably.
Fine tuning, by the way, which assumes the facts of physics, and which if there is fine tuning, it's we who are being fine tuned by natural selection to survive in this universe. But if there is fine tuning, then it's assuming the facts of an old universe, and I assume then it assumes the truth of evolution, because that's how we got where we are, through the chemical processes and through carbon and stars and all of that. So I would like to ask you, Adam, later when you get a chance to reply, for a better definition of a God, not just some spaceless, timeless. In the Old Testament, God had a body. He had a face, he had hands. Moses was told not to look at his face. You can look at my backside. What was Moses actually looking at? When he was looking at the backside of it, was there something physical there? Of course, modern Christians have sort of, turned God into a immaterial thing, whereas in the ancient times, of course, they believed God was an actual being.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Christian idea, well, it's not all Christians, but a big chunk of evangelical Christians, God is this being that doesn't exist. It's a heresy. It is counter to accepted scripture. That's not what scripture says. Not even how do you even infer that from scripture? But details.
There's a book out called God and Anatomy by Francesca Stavrakopoulou, who points that out. So please give us a better definition of what this being is, not just some best guess. So when I talked about fine-tuning, if there's a God, why would he need to tune anything? I mean, why would he need to fine tune? It looks like God has stumbled onto this scene where there's all this randomness, and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to have to tune this. I'm going to have to tune that, and pretty soon I'm going to make it so that human beings, which are the most special thing in the universe, besides me, human beings can exist."
That's a thing that doesn't get pointed at often enough. The focus on humans as being the goal of creation, the special thing, that is the biggest red flag. You're talking about mythology. And Daniel Quinn makes this point in his short novel Ishmael, where Ishmael is trying to get the main character, whom we're seeing the story through, to acknowledge that what we perceive as, much of what we perceive as our culture, is actually mythology. He says, well, consider this. What makes up mythology? You've got the origin creation story, you've got
Yes.
the destiny, and you've got the relationship between you and the gods. Now, if you were to go
chosen one stuff, like it always chooses some exceptional person as the central focus of the mythology, always.
I'm not, and I don't disagree, but I'm not sure I agree either. I'd have to ponder that some.
Really?
But
I mean, I'm really thinking Hercules, Trojan War, the Iliad, everything, Epic of Gilgamesh, every single one has some sort of chosen person in it.
Oh, sure. Those are, well, that's like specific myths within a pantheon of overall mythology.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
those
No,
are-
gotcha.
those are
Gotcha.
all
Gotcha.
part of
Okay.
the
Yeah.
the Greek system. But yeah, Daniel Quinney posits, like, if you were to go back in time, hop into a time machine, you're a temporal archaeologist, and you go back 2 billion years. So the most advanced form of life on Earth is basically some kind of jellyfish creature. And you ask this jellyfish creature, hey, could you tell me about your world? And the jellyfish might say, because you can speak to these things, you're very talented. It might say, well, something like 12.8 billion years ago, there was the Big Bang, and then the universe expanded and cooled, and matter condensed, and galaxies formed, and stars blew up and created new matter, and eventually our star formed, and then the Earth formed around it, and then life evolved, and it started to progress through various forms, millions and millions of years, where it was just microorganisms. But then finally, the pinnacle of creation, the jellyfish appeared.
Yeah.
It's a very self-centered view of things. Humans are the mirror image of God. We're made in God's image. We're the most amazing things ever, which is why hippos eat us.
Yeah, but I think humans are amazing enough
It's
without
true.
having a god. Humans are insanely clever little apes. We are absolutely rocking it as far as the way that we think about things. There's no comparison between some animals and us, and most animals are nowhere near what we've gotten to. But that may not be a good thing. It may be something, but just we're special enough without a god.
Quite so. I mean, we do a bunch of remarkable things. It's true. There is no single thing that humans do that we do better than any other animal. But the totality of the things we do create a set of emergent properties whereby we have the power to adapt our environment to us. I'm not adapting to the cold ass world outside. I have a nice artificial cave.
I think I would push back on that, saying that the one thing that we do better than other animals is socio-technical skill communication. I think we actually do that better than any other animal out there.
I'm not sure what that means.
Technical skills are ones that you create things, you actually manipulate things. It's technical skills are the ones where you actually do stuff in the world, kind of thing. You actually manipulate or change things. And that passing that from individual to individual is actually incredible. Like we communicate that not only horizontally to each other, but also through time by recording it down. I think that our ability to pass on knowledge is insane. And that is probably one of the reasons why we've been so successful.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Like, there are other creatures that appear to be capable of some form of language, but our language, I mean, first of all, we've developed it and honed it partly through the perception capabilities of our brains and our vast repository of knowledge. So we can store so many different combinations of phonemes such that I can articulate what's going through my head in very near real time. You can hear it and turn those weird sounds back into ideas. It's a form of assisted telepathy. and it keeps getting more refined. You know, if you look at language a few hundred years ago, yeah, it had some cool flourishes to it, but it was less precise. We're always getting
Yep.
more and more and more accurate, to the point of very nearly being able to relay thoughts directly from mind to mind through the intermediary of the funny noises we make. And that's fucking cool. But beyond that, as you just pointed out, Mark, thanks to written language, we can now pass that information across fucking time. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's incredible. And see, but I don't think that's unique necessarily to humans. I mean, we're just really good at it, but I think that chimpanzees are teaching each other how to use tools as well, and they're passing those tools down. So I think chimpanzees are probably the next best on socio-technical communication, like showing each other how to do stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for passing information down. You know, quite a few species do stuff like that, but it's limited because it's only who you can directly talk to. Whereas we can write shit down in a book, and it can just sit there unpassed by anyone for 100 years, and then one day somebody finds it, and boom, information right in their faces. It's cool shit.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm tuning this.
I think just, Ember, I think that maybe we might want to do a part 2, because I don't think I can go another 3 hours. I honestly don't. I'm so sorry. Yeah, as I said, I've had a bit of problems at the moment with some digestive problems, and I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Pete.
Oh no,
I can't go
that's
6 hours.
fair. I was hoping
I
it
can't.
wouldn't take 6 hours.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We'll find something short and switch it over in some point in the future. I'm not stickler on it. I'm not saying, hey, it's got to be next week or something. No, I'm cool. Just we'll switch it over at some point. Ems, you know, I'm casual with stuff like that. You know that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we're mostly just having fun with these damn things. But there is a possibility that we'll finish this shortly. If this takes like an hour and a half next week, then we could start the next thing that you want to do. I don't know if you want to do like a conjoined episode kind of thing like that, but it's an option. I'm just throwing it out there.
Conjoined episode. Wow. That's
I come up with weird ideas. It's what I do. But again, it's just a suggestion.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's totally fine. Totally fine. So yeah, we'll have a chat about it, and we'll see what we think.
It didn't automatically. Okay, here we go. Alrighty, so yeah, we'll hold that thought, I suppose.
Yep.
That's what we do, is we hold on to thoughts. We snuggle them tight like stuffed critters. Or I don't know. I'm in a weird mood. It's
totally fine. That's totally fine. I'm so sorry, everybody. I really wish I could push myself, but I feel like I've got a headache coming on, so which may or may not be anything to do with the debate. I will put that out there. First thoughts and reactions is that this is just a reworking of it. It's like William Lane Craig's greatest hits. That's what it is. That's essentially what I'm seeing. I think that. So I like that he hasn't gone for what William Lane Craig does, which is sort of say the teleological argument, the ontological argument, the cosmological argument, and transcendental. He always puts out these words, and to me it sounds like William Lane Craig. I mean, he's a philosopher. He definitely is very knowledgeable in the area of philosophy and the basic fundamentals. I think his arguments suck. But that's a technical term used in philosophy when it sucks. But like I think that I think that the other guy's trying to appeal to a more wide base by not using the names. But I think that William Lane Craig does it in also because he sounds more knowledgeable when he's using it. When you take away the fancy words and actually explain it, I think it detracts. Like, it doesn't even seem as convincing kind of thing. It seems like, wait, what? Like, yeah. And to use the original kalam that doesn't even end at a god is really weird. It's very strange. I don't see the point of it then. Like, you're saying, hey, it's got a first cause. Oh, well, we assume it's a god because probably it's a god.
Because I really want it to be.
Wow, I don't know. You know what you should have on your merch store? Just something Deviant said just made me think you should have hats on your merch store. I guarantee you, like seriously, you're very well known for some amazing hats, and I do. Sorry, that just came up.
I mean, it's
No,
not
you're fine,
necessarily
Fern.
that maybe you know. I did have a merch store before. I had t-shirts and stickers and all sorts of things, but I don't think I had hats. Maybe I should have gone a different direction with that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Time is a bit of an issue, but
Yeah.
yeah,
no, totally.
So Deviant says share the love, like the stream, and subscribe to the channel. All of those things are excellent ideas and are objectively morally virtuous. And become a member of the Court of the Queen of Hats. Yeah, because our Ember members get all kinds of goodies, including all the fun custom emojis. I know I have to remake my yays and nays and face palms and shit because they're a little out of date, but there's goodies. And when we get enough members and new emoji slots open up, we get to vote on them. And well, you guys get to vote on them. I don't get a vote because the system doesn't give me one, but it's there. And that's the least of the benefits. You get the cool badges, you get the custom content, occasional member streams. I've been pitching this a lot today, so I'll just leave that one there.
Yep.
We're trying to do better at capitalism, folks. We're trying. But do like and subscribe. It's free. It helps the channel a lot. And I work 5 jobs, folks. I'm very tired all the time. And I really need, if I could just not even do YouTube full time, but like just get rid of one of those jobs, it would be huge. All right. Before we go, Mark, what have you got coming up this week?
Okay, so this week I will try and work on some new videos. I was talking with Jess, the lovely Jess, about a possible collab, which should be exciting. Now, I don't know for sure. We're just sort of seeing if there's anything we can pop out there, but I would love to appear with Jess because I'm a big fan of Jess. I think she's awesome. And she has done a ton for me. She did a special appearance on the Emu Report and things like that. She's just been amazing. And, I think she's awesome. So that might be coming up. I might have another video if I can make it come out. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I've got a bit of a headache, but I'm fine. I'm fine. I also have Aimbot on Wednesdays, which is dealing more with it's just a practical morality exercise. We're basically saying who is morally bankrupt in any given situation. Take situations off a Reddit forum where people said, am I right or wrong for doing this? And we're going to try to apply secular humanism in the real world. And it's more just to show how you can think about things with consequentialism, which is the reasonable consequences for actions, and utilitarianism, with human well-being being the central focus of that. And it's a bit of fun to look at these situations which people say, am I right or wrong? And making a judgment on it. So it is consensual, solicited judgment on people, which is, that's the best way to judge people, is when they ask for it. So,
True.
There's that. And then on my Friday, which is Thursday night Eastern time, I have Fundamentalist Fails, where I go into the sometimes funny, sometimes disturbing, sometimes insane world of fundamentalist religions and fundamentalist thoughts all the time. Every week I go into something, and some of them are weird, some of them are wrong, some of them are hilarious. It all depends on what comes up. But yeah, that's what I've got going on. Yes, yeah. It is, Fern. It's the Am I the A-hole subreddit. Yes, that's correct. Yes. And because I didn't want to use a-hole in all of the titles, I just named it I'm morally bankrupt or them, and it came out to aimbot, which I loved. So I love a good initialization or acronym. I absolutely do.
Absolutely. And it adds some originality, because there's so many channels that cover Reddit stuff, but yours is the only one with aimbot.
Yeah. It's a marketing thing, I think. I don't know. I just didn't want to use a-hole in my titles all the time, it might give the wrong impression. But
It'd be hell on monetization.
yeah, it would be, yes. Look, and the thing is that you can say, oh, well, that's just a Reddit thread, but they are doing morality. They're saying which code of conduct ought we abide to be good or bad. Like, this is the thing. People go, oh, philosophy's got nothing to do with me. But philosophy, and I know why, because philosophy is annoying when people come at it like trying to make you feel dumb or try to trick you with it or try to make these arguments that, you know, don't seem right, and there's probably good reasons why. But you know, we all engage it in some way when we consider the world and go, oh, should I ought to have done that or not ought to? That's essentially morality. That is what it is. So yeah, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, come along. No, you're fine, James. You didn't cause it. No, I had it earlier before you even arrived, mate. Like, I could, you know, you feel it building up kind of thing. I had that earlier. So definitely not you, mate. I've just been a bit sick lately. I've had some digestion problems. I'll be fine. It's just, yeah, I can't do 6 hours. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
We're not as young as we used to be. I mean, it's true every day, but yeah, you know,
that's
details. True. All right. As for me, I think Tuesday, the new video goes public. Wednesday, a new short. Godbot is returning.
Oh, nice. Well, just one more thing, James. Look, like, I understand that you don't want to be mocked for your beliefs, and people usually don't. It's like, you're very welcome on my channel, but we don't like people preaching, basically saying, hey, this is what things are, and not discussing it with us. That's what preaching is. It's asserting something without actually discussing it or in any way having a conversation with it. But you're very welcome as long as you have a conversation and don't just assert things without any discussion. That's what we don't like. And I don't think you'd like that on your, you know, if you're on a channel and we come in and say, hey, God isn't real, you know, all you guys are deluded, you know, that's annoying. Like, if we're not going to discuss it with you, that would be annoying. So, you know, just bear that in mind, and you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's the main thing we do, is like, we're perfectly happy to talk to people as long as they're not dicks. But yeah. James has been around a very long time. James has been popping in on this channel nearly since the beginning. And, you know, is overall, we disagree on a lot of things scientifically and philosophically, but overall, James actually is a really good being. So, yeah. Okay. It's, good times. All right. So, all right, join us next weekend for part 2. Over at Mark's Place. Make sure you're subscribed. Catch me Thursday for the transpositions, assuming I don't die of exhaustion first and can get, I do good news over there. We all need more good news. I've already got production started on this week's episode. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping I can put a full show together. It's a real struggle, folks. But that's a thing we do too. There's other stuff. All my links are on betterthanember.com. And thank you all so much for joining. Like I said earlier, interacting with you folks is the reason we do lives, even when we disagree. Love seeing you folks here. And, you know, a bunch of you folks, you know, week after week, it's nice to see you. It's nice to, you know, see how things are going and interact with all y'all. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. And you know, Pragmatic Crystal with all the links, and you know, John being a Sydney Raptor. I should have thought of a better compliment first. But yeah, there've been so many of you folks, and I could go on and on and on and on, as I often do. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Being part of the community. Community is so important, especially right now. And being kind. Good night.
Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop.